we got our TV on? Oh yeah, okay, good. So I'll call the meeting to order. We've got an interesting agenda of really two big things. Greg is going to talk to us about step code, and then we've got our work plan. I'd like to add one more item, which will become a 5.2, and that will be an update on composting, and then we move the work plan to 5.3. And the carrot, Maureen was going to present, well, we'll see what happens when we get to it. I mean, it's an information item, I believe, because it's all in the reports all here, and I can point to a couple of bits here. Okay, so any other changes to the agenda? Additions, deletions? You get everybody got that? 5.2 composting update, 5.3 then finalizing the work plan. Mark, yeah, are you?
Oh, did you just Stephanie was stealing stuff from me? I got
Just for
sidetracked.
the note, there's supplementary material.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that other information we've got, this is to help us in the work plan, this sheets, everybody should have this. And you should also have this sheet here, which was the our notes that we put up on the grabbing a few more.
Yeah.
So these were the post-it notes, and so we'll be working with the post-it, the results of the post-it notes today. So, and approval of the agenda. Anyone? Okay, and seconded? Okay, we'll just say, all those in favor? Opposed and carried, okay, so unanimously approved. We'll just wait for our... Well, let's just go to the minutes while we're... any changes or omissions? We've got one. We left Alan off the... you left Alan off the minutes. Anything else? Anyone found? So a motion to approve the minutes? Alan stood up. I think that was those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so the minutes are approved. So let's just move to step codes. And I see we've got a nice screen to have a look at. Glenn, do you know everybody?
Yeah, I do now, yes.
Okay, good.
Yep. Okay, so thanks for inviting me to come talk about step code. I think it's an evolving piece, as well as it's been around for a little while. I'm hoping this becomes more of a conversation than me talking at you. I'm more curious about where you're coming from, what you know ahead of time. Has anybody actually looked into step code, even a little bit on their website to learn even a piece of it? A little bit, okay. Yeah. So energystepcode.ca is their website. It is a really good professional information-filled website. It talks about the energy, performance, and efficiency changes that they're pushing through new buildings in the province. And right now they're through residential buildings. So that's been the focus. In 2014, there was a major change to the building code. It blew things up for a lot of people. I think it was December 20th they released it. It's perfect time, probably Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. They changed the building code and had an addendum that when they started introducing much more, much higher requirements in thermal performance of buildings, in Part 9 buildings, which are smaller or residential buildings. And on top of that, ventilation. So there's these two pieces that come into it. And I think that's important to know, because that was when they were looking at talking about introducing step code as a tool for introducing building energy performance improvements. So what has happened up until 2014 pretty much is the building code said you need to build things in this way to get this performance, called prescriptive. So there's kind of a list of things you have to do, and you just built it that way. But when you started making a building that was a little bit different than that, it wouldn't actually perform at all like the building code said, because the building code essentially allows you to design and build a very simple building. So have you heard about the BC box or the what's the Vancouver Special?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
In Vancouver, just box. It's really very simple buildings. You can build that with using the building code, and also the prescriptive method for energy performance would probably perform okay. So who builds like that now? I get a lot of comments about how expensive it is to build that. Well, if you built a Vancouver Special, it would actually be fairly affordable comparatively. But people don't build that way. So that's one thing that's changed a lot. And then the other piece is just in general, when we talk about greenhouse gases, cost of energy, consumption of fossil fuels, all these things that spawn this. So the changes in the building code were then continuing on through step code, and I'll run you through some of these things here. This is a slideshow that's provided by step code, and I just want to use it as a talking point. It basically covers the basics. So if you've been to the website, you might have learned a few of these pieces before. So there's the Building Act, and the building code fits in within that, and there's also the I was going to mention here the Climate Leadership Plan, that's the BC program. There's also something that's national as well, which you're probably more in tune to than I am. I'm trying to learn some of those pieces, kind of coming from a different direction. So within our Building Act, we've had to change some of these things, and this building code net zero ready talk has been, this is our goal. 2032, we want to have all buildings performing to essentially 50% better than they perform now. Not 5 times better, which would be something absolutely crazy, but 50% better. The net zero piece is also another one that's in flux. We're gonna, when we get through the slides, you're gonna start to learn or hear about some of these other programs that have been in place, and you may have heard of some, and I'd like to hear from you if you even just have heard of it before, because there are a plethora of different programs. And one of the challenges that I've been talking to Sarah about as well is we have to figure out how to bring these together so we have some sort of direction of where we're going to go, so everybody understands and can we can get some compliance, right? We need to find some compliance in some way. So it's a fully volunteer program right now, which is really important to understand. Currently, Bowen Island Municipality has not stepped into the step code realm, as opposed to not very far from here, where I'm very familiar with, is North Van City, which has been the absolute leader in the province for energy performance, adopting step code, incentivizing all sorts of things. So there's a real range of participation.
So right now it's voluntary,
It
but
is.
at some point it's going to become mandatory.
Absolutely, yes. So
Is there a timeline for that?
the latest I've heard, we also have the luxury of having James Glade on the island.
And I've been to a couple of his talks.
Yeah, so he's the communications director or some sort for step code. So we get information through him. And he's the one that's told us that step 1 will probably be mandated by just 2020, which is not very long from now. And then there's talk about 2022 and 2027 for step 2 and step 3, which is going to be mandated. So when you're mandated to do it, it's extremely hard to catch up. Kind of like December 20th, 2014, suddenly, bang, this is the new building code. And architects didn't even understand what was going on. So it was a huge learning curve. Step code is kind of connecting that second.
Right.
So, but I've put in some dates at the end, kind of as a question.
Okay, thanks.
Scribble those down.
Yeah.
Greg, isn't there also a requirement for local governments to adopt it into their bylaws? I think there is a timeline set out for that.
2020
Is
will
it
be
2020? Okay.
will be step 1, is what we understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have we been told yet? I
I
don't think so, but
documents somewhere, but anyways.
yeah, I've seen it, and there's lots of talk about, like, because if you want to get to 2032, you need a plan. You can't just say 2032 we're going to be there, and you can drag your feet for 15 years. It's not going to happen.
And not to derail your conversation.
Not at all.
If we're
It's not
gonna-
a derail.
So to get to step 1, which is now a year and a few months away, like, what would builders on the island need to, like, is it onerous on them to?
It's a great question. Step 1 is basically proving that you're meeting building code,
The existing building.
existing building code.
But don't you have to do that anyway?
Yes. So this is a little bit comical.
You do
anyways.
your job.
Yeah, I do my job, but the only outside piece is what's called a blower door test,
Okay.
testing the air tightness of a building,
Right.
which raises tons of conversation about air tightness. Oh, the old houses, they breathe so well, they're very healthy. Well, yeah, they were, and I have a 1912 house, and the wood is in very good shape and everything else, and the heat travels out of that building on a constant basis
Right.
from every corner.
Right.
It's very efficient.
So it's really not onerous on the builders really,
No.
if they're just having to comply with the building code as it is.
Comply with the building code, proving how you're doing it, and also getting a blower door test, which technically doesn't even have to pass a standard. You just have to do it. Like, setting the bar so low, you're just gonna trip over it, right?
Right.
So,
Well, and a lot of people probably don't even know what a blower test is.
That's
So
right.
Maybe it's a good education.
part of it is nobody on the island does blower door tests.
Right.
So I've been trying to see if there's an appetite for someone to take that on as maybe a small piece of what they do already. It's sure it's a small business opportunity, a piece of what someone else might do, but at the same time, we need to find a way of providing a service so that we can get some buy-in.
Sorry,
Not at all.
maybe,
Yeah, no, I keep going.
No,
I was gonna ask you.
please.
The house that I built in 2010,
Mhm.
I thought were required to do that test. And we turned on all our fans and, there was a pressure gauge somewhere, and it passed. And we were relieved because it meant we could move in or something.
Mhm.
Was that a voluntary test by the,
2010 building code, or so that'd be 2006 building code? I'm not sure. It's before my time of really understanding the code. Since 2012, we should have been doing it.
oh,
So I've assumed that part of my role as building inspector is trying to bring us up to current standards
I see.
and practices that have not been the same as in the past. So the prescriptive method of designing your building has to be followed, that's fine. But at the same time, what are you doing to make your house more efficient and airtight, et cetera? So there have been requirements, it's just been a different way of doing things. So the owner's challenge of step code, step one, is not very onerous. I get lots of participation and agreement through a number of builders that I work with, and others are extremely resistant to any change at all. I guess that? Yeah, so, but I've actually been very, very impressed by a number of builders that are and homeowners, right? Because it's two pieces to that puzzle for sure, that are interested in improving their practice. Some are not, and that's a little bit more challenging, but others, I have conversations about making improvements on buildings. And I think it was 2 weeks ago while I was at an inspection and speaking to the carpenter who's been working on the project, carpenter builder. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "This is the weirdest inspection I've ever had." Because we just talked about improvements, and it wasn't about no and this and that, and I only come at this time. I'm trying to be as accommodating as possible, and we talked about some improvements. 2 days later, the builder got back to me and said, "Oh, we've run by your ideas with the energy modeler, and one small change has allowed us to go one step better performance for our building," which is an important piece to it. So that can happen. And I go back to buildings and I see, "Oh, you've adopted that. Oh, you've tried this. Oh, yeah, no, it worked really well." So I'm starting to see that.
Awesome.
And at the same time, having builders that are interested in voluntarily demonstrating step code buildings as just for their own interest, maybe for the homeowner who would be interested, maybe it's a marketing piece, whatever it might be. So there's a couple projects that are just getting off the ground, and I think we'll be able to demonstrate that. Then we can ask them, what are the costs to do it? What was the benefit to the homeowner? What was the interest in doing that? So we can share that with others. I think would be an important piece. Because the instant response we get is, it costs too much. I don't believe in numbers. Why do we want to do it that way? But in one way, we have to. We're going to be mandated to change it. And if suddenly I'm going to be telling someone to do something that's way beyond what their experience is, it's going to be a lot harder for them to not only buy in, but complete. And then we won't be able to provide occupancy if they don't meet certain standards. And then they'll just be in a whole lot of trouble, financially or time-wise or whatever it is. So that's why I think we should be getting involved a little bit earlier. Step one is not onerous, but it's a different mindset. We had a lot of questions about it. And there are a number of buildings right now being built at step 2 and step 3 just by what homeowners and builders are doing. We just haven't proved it yet.
So are you going to have other slides that tell us about step 2 and 3 and what they are and so on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are some of the different certification programs that exist. So if you look at any of those on there, I'm wondering if anybody is familiar with even any of those.
Energy Star.
Energy Star, yeah, in appliances as well as buildings.
Built green, we talked about 10 years ago or so.
Yeah. So we have 3 developments on the island that are built green gold required, as well as Energuide 80 required, which Energuide ends in 2.5 months. So that's part of what we're talking about is what does Energuide 80 look like? Maybe we can roll that into a step code requirement to sort of the conversation. So there are 3, and one of them is Rose by the Cove, which has been an interesting project in itself. The tiny little buildings, tiny lots, but it's built green gold, and people are like, "What's this?" So I have to learn about built green gold and explain it to them about what the qualifications are. It has to be a certified building, and not that I don't know too many people or contractors on the island that are built green certified. So anyway, that's one of the examples that has come up, and these are some of the participants in spearheading the step code. So I've been involved in the energy steering committee with step code, not the step code council itself, like that's totally not the realm, but more with energy modelers and some inspectors, etc. And just learning about what it is. There's some metrics that have changed to make it easier to certify buildings in different areas and also sizes, etc. So I'm trying to stay up to it as much as I can, but it takes a lot of time and energy to do it. So we can quickly.
So just on that last one though, so
Yeah.
all the organizations on the left, Great Vancouver Home Builders, Canadian Home Builders, Victoria Home Builders, were they all involved in it? So all right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of how we roll this out, so we were able to explain to people that their associations actually were working on this.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the very helpful organizations I found is they call it Homeowner Protection Office up at BC Housing.
Yeah.
They are such a great resource of information. They're supportive anyway if you actually have to talk to them, but the amount of documents they have on their website that I can actually forward on to builders, which is basically building improvement strategies, have been extremely helpful. And those are the documents I give to AIBC certified architects to say, this is how you do it. Could you please do it correctly so I can improve your project?
Good.
So yeah, they've been very good with that. So step 1 is what we're talking about right now, basic building code 2012. It will be the same for 2018, which is December 10th, 2018, coming up is the new building code that will be in force. So I'd like to be able to talk about that as well at the end. So meeting basic building code and demonstrating an airtightness quality of your building. And like I said, you don't have to pass a minimum requirement. Like Vancouver has a minimum requirement of 3.5 air changes per hour. It may not mean too much, but it means it's kind of air controlled building, not super high efficiency. At the other end of it, we're going to talk about 0.5 air changes per hour. So basically you need to create a plastic bag that you're going to live in. But that can't be the only thing, because you can imagine how unhealthy that would be.
Right. So, but currently it would be 3, but all your air would change 3.5 times in an hour in your whole house. That seems astonishing. That's pretty leaky.
That's at a fairly high pressure though, at 50 pascals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So at fairly high pressure, like
Yeah.
that's
All right,
what would
okay.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that 50 is the standard.
Okay.
On a regular day, if there's no pressure imbalance, of course, it's not the same. But we mostly talk about heating seasons. We don't have to talk about cooling too much.
Right.
But heating seasons, we create an imbalance in pressure a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So then as we move up the steps, like step 2 is 10% better than step 1. So, and when they refer to these improvements, they talk about what's the term? The test building. It's not test, it's another word. There's a comparison. So if you just did building code, this same building perform up to this level, to meet step 2, you need to have 10% improvement to get to step 2. Not onerous, like I said, if you do a little bit more care to how you construct the building or plan things, you could be at step 2 without knowing it. And that's why I think step 3 is absolutely currently realistic in quality buildings. It's happening already. Because 20% isn't all that onerous. They start talking about improved air changes, and I've talked to some builders who have had remarkably high performing air change control just from their common practice. But I can see it. I can see why that's happening because I get to see the building at all stages and talk to them about it. So I think it's good to know that a number of local builders are working at this level.
Wow.
Excellent. Yeah. So then getting up to step 4, we're talking about bigger increases. This is when it starts to change. You can see the separation in the graph a little bit. That not only are we making improvements, but then 40% increase. You have to really start rethinking design. You have to plan this, plan and design stage. It becomes much, much more important. You're talking about energy for thermal control as well as ventilation systems, mechanical systems, etc. You have to plan that much more from the beginning. And then step 5 is the goal for 2032. It's called NetZero Ready. NetZero is actually a program as well, which is a little bit in flux about what's going to be happening with NetZero and step code 5 and also passive house. Has anybody heard of passive house as well? So I'm quite familiar with that. I have actually trained to be I'm a certified passive house consultant. So I did the training on that a couple of years ago. I'm doing a building in Vancouver, building a building that I designed as a passive house design. But it'll be step 5. We're going to do step 5 for each step. So it's very much about building science. Right? You learn the building science and how buildings perform better. So that's the goal, 2032, and incremental steps of getting there. And I really think I just emailed James a couple of weeks ago and he said we should hear in the next few weeks about the plan for up to step 3, the guide, the timeline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we should be hearing it fairly soon.
So a couple of questions. I've got one around NetZero ready. So that word ready.
Yes.
So it's not net zero, but it's
Correct.
ready to be net zero if.
When you have an alternative energy solution, so you have 0 energy consumption.
Oh, I see.
So my building will be net 0. Okay, photovoltaic panels, etc. So that's how you get to net 0.
Oh, okay, by
Photovoltaic
putting-
panels or other systems.
Yeah.
These buildings do not require heating systems or extremely minimal heating
Yeah.
systems. So the electrical consumption for mechanical use is the bigger one. So hot water, domestic hot water, ventilation, and small bits of heating, lighting, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you can reduce the need and the energy levels of that, so LED lighting,
Right.
using natural light in your designs a lot more, there's all sorts of things that can be done. But again, that all happens at the idea design and planning stage. Once you start building, that stuff is done.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding correctly then, to get to level 3 would be using current techniques but doing it well, roughly.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas into the other 2, you're redesigning the way the thing is built.
Yeah, and also taking a leap of, this is the kind of equipment we've used before, and now you have to start thinking about that.
Right.
This is how we've basically built before, the envelope of the building.
Yeah.
You need to start rethinking those things more. Because the air change level requirements drop drastically too, through those steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that break in the line is the rethink piece. But it happens a lot. Lots of buildings are happening that way right now. Not necessarily here, but other places, for sure. Yes,
A
Alan?
question on the cost scenario.
Yeah.
Then
Mhm.
presumably what we're seeing is increasing capital costs initially and way lower operating costs, and that's what.
That's right.
There's a net benefit in.
There's a net benefit
long-term
for that, yeah, so the upfront investment. But there's also some bonuses when you can actually design a building to a certain level of performance when you suddenly do not require a mechanical heating system. Could you imagine taking that out of your budget? Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them are very small systems, but as soon as you start putting a system in, like that's a minimum capital cost. Not, get the bigger furnace so when you come home you can have your house hot in 10 minutes. Like, that is not going to fly. That does not work. But the biggest benefit, I mean, we can talk about reduced operating costs. The biggest benefit that most stakeholders talk about for the improvement is the comfort of the building. So the air is fresh. There are no cold places. You don't have foggy windows. You know, all these things that don't happen, you can be comfortable in every place at any time and on a constant level. It's not getting too hot. It's not getting too cold.
Doesn't fluctuate.
Yeah, it doesn't fluctuate nearly as much.
So the air is always fresh, but
Magic. Yeah, who wants to buy one?
you're in this envelope. So how do you keep the air fresh?
Ventilation system.
Okay.
So one of the other key components is called a heat recovery ventilation system. Most of the time, we're talking about heating seasons. Otherwise, we either have windows open, or I run mine most of the time anyway, just because you can close the windows and it's still really comfortable and you know that warm area
Right.
in the summer.
Okay.
But it's a heat exchanger, so the heat that is in the building and the stale air that's being removed crosses over, doesn't mix, but it mechanically crosses over like a radiator
Yeah.
to then take the heat from inside the building, warm up the air coming in.
Right.
And the unit I have is about 90% efficient.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so that's one unit that can actually change the performance of building from here to here,
Right.
just in that.
And you're talking about a heat pump?
Nope.
No, heat
Just
exchanger.
air.
Heat
Heat
exchanger.
exchanger.
So it takes the
Fresh air.
heat out of the pipes going out and puts them into the air going in.
So is that different? So a heat pump is not?
Heat pump is for generating heat or
Yeah.
cold. It's a machine for creating heat or cold, like a furnace, but it uses the air.
Okay.
This is a heat exchanger for the fresh air coming into the house.
So my dad got he called it a heat pump
Yeah.
on his unit, and he takes the heat from the air.
The ambient
outside,
air,
yeah,
yes.
And moves it inside. So
That's
that's a
right.
heat exchanger.
Yes, the heat pump.
Heat pump
That's a
is,
heat pump. So it's taking the heat out of the air, you can take it out of the water, you can take it out of the ground. You're creating heat to heat your house.
Okay.
my way of understanding the heat pump is it's basically a fridge. Like,
Right.
There's the heat that comes out of the back of the fridge.
Yep.
You're sending the cold air outside and the back of the fridge is
Sorry.
going into the house. So it's the same system basically.
Yes.
Heat pumps were first designed and implemented in hot climates for cooling.
Hmm.
But they discovered if you just turn it backwards, it does the opposite.
Yeah.
So when you put in a heat pump and you're with an air system in the summer, you actually have the option of cooling. You suddenly have the air conditioner. You might not use it as much, but you just turn it to go backwards. It's refrigerated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if your refrigerator is inefficient, your house is warm.
So does a heat exchanger look much like a heat pump in terms of the unit, or?
No, it has, well, the unit itself, like when you see a heat pump, it looks like the old style air conditioner.
Yes, or it's up above in a format that's,
Absolutely, yes.
but the heat exchanger is similar?
No, these ones are ducted systems, so it looks like a box with lots of ducting coming in and out. Because what it's doing is taking cool air, it can be cool, but fresh air from the outside, bringing it in. If it's in the heating season, it's a diaphragm kind of setup that the heat exchanges, not the air.
Okay.
So it heats up the air coming in and brings fresh air into your house, into bedrooms, living areas, etc. There's a vent right there. We actually have some sort of ventilation system in this building. So that would be bringing in air, and then in places like kitchens, laundry, bathrooms, it would be exhausting the air. So it creates a flow within the building, and it's constant. It's not like we just turn the bathroom fan on,
Mhm.
which that can work, but it's constant. So
As long as the power's on, it's just always.
Yeah, you can adjust how they work, but that's basically what it does. It just constantly circulates the air. You can tell when they're not on.
So in terms of costs, I mean, I was chatting with James about this, and I think he told me that step 3 was 20% better in energy consumption, but I'm trying to remember his number. It was like 2 to 5% more in terms of cost, something like that.
Exactly, yeah. Those are the numbers that have done through studies on several occasions, and those are the numbers that people don't believe. So, 5% more, that's impossible. I would say that it would be more if you don't have the infrastructure, the knowledge, the skills within, like the skill set within the building community to be able to do it.
What do you mean by the infrastructure? I get the skill set.
So if you, for example, you need a blower door test,
Oh, I see.
you had to bring a blower door test from somewhere else, well,
Then
it's going to cost more.
Bring it on the ferry and all that stuff,
Yeah, or if you can't coordinate these things. So there's that sort of thing, as well as supply materials and equipment, and being able to access it. We're pretty lucky, I mean, we live remote, but we have access to the biggest supply ports anyway, so we get lots of things. But that would be one of the challenging pieces.
great.
The nice thing is too, though, with this whole idea, it's not prescriptive anymore. You don't have to do it this way. You just have to perform to this level, and you can do it a number of different ways. right? So you're making these, alternative or modern or unconventional design of buildings, but you can still gain performance, but it takes more work, and that's where the energy modeling piece comes into it.
Okay.
So beyond step one, you have to start engaging energy modelers who are specialists in looking at the building and determining the performance of the building, and to get to a certain performance level or improvements from basic. That's basically computer programs and analysis in that regard.
So we are doing, later today, we're going to be doing a workshop kind of thing with a bunch of ideas we brainstormed a month ago to develop our action plan, our plan for the year. And the third box is building and step code.
Yep.
So, we're going to be talking about this later, and obviously we're a committee that's interested in making environmental improvements around the island. So obviously we'd like to move our way up the step code and not be laggards and so on. But tell us,
Throw that in there.
yeah, tell us your advice about how we would, what kind of pace would. Obviously, we don't want to get all our builders annoyed. We want people to be proud of this and keen on it and informed before they start, rather than everybody sort of say, "What are you guys doing to us?" So what would be some of the steps we need to take? The kind of timing. I know North End's already in 3. I think
They are.
West and I think all 3 North Shore is already stepped.
North End for sure is at step 3 already for single family and I think duplex buildings.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you feel the best way to move forward in terms of engaging our builders and developers and the timing and so on.
Well, from what I think, I believe that we are perfectly capable to adopt step 1 tomorrow.
Okay.
I think also the reasonable way to unroll this, I've talked about it with a few people, is as of December 10th, 2018, we need to be changing a bunch of things.
Okay.
With the new building code introduction, which has all this within it. Step code is referred to in the building code now. I think this is when we need to be able to do this. We're going to do it. The conversations I
I'm a
had.
bit confused. So December 10th, 2018, that's when
The 2018 building code
comes into effect.
comes into effect.
So we have to do this anyway.
No,
No.
we don't have to. I
Okay.
think it's a great time to, if you're going to choose a date.
I see what you're saying. It comes into effect, and so we can.
There's a new
erase
building
it.
code now, but the step
Right.
1 doesn't happen until 2020.
Yeah,
But
step
you have to-
code is
Yeah.
delayed, and when we
Yeah.
have to do it,
Right.
I think it would be a good opportunity to do it. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah.
Are there major changes to the building code?
I don't think so. I think basically spent 6 years major changing it.
Right.
And then when 2018 comes out, it's just consolidated and
Okay.
it starts to make sense. What I've seen so far, I'm hoping to get to a seminar soon to find out more, but I don't think there are major changes. I think what I learned at the spring conference was there's a lot of bleeding over a few years and getting used to this new setup because it was a massive change. So I try not to answer too much.
Right.
Yeah, and then national code didn't change a lot either. Because there's the national code changes first. National code came out in 2015, I think. And then the provinces then look at it and say, okay, what do we want to do? And then I only know of 2 jurisdictions in the province that have their own building code. So Vancouver and Saanich, for some reason. They've got their own.
There you go.
Vancouver has its own code. It's part of it.
Yeah,
So really the growing pains with these changes have already kind of been occurring already.
Yeah, and the conversation's been happening, and then the step code thing started to grow. Like, what's step code, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
This has been happening for a little while. We will be forced to, but I really think this is the best time to do it. I hope that the new council will want to do this as well. It actually makes our jobs quite a bit easier because we are in step a little bit more. We have to rely on other jurisdictions as well. And we have to go there anyway. It's going to happen. And we could drag our feet to the end. But there are lots of small, medium, and large municipalities that have adopted and carried on. Others have not, so it's a whole range. And I think, not here, but there is a list on their website that show the ones that have kind of what they've been doing. Some have offered incentive programs. There's different ways they've done this to get some early participation.
So if we were to get aligned with the other North Shore communities and sort of aim for step 3, what would that look like? What would we need to do in terms of engagement with our builders and so on? How much time would we give?
Yeah.
Like, how did they do it so quickly?
They started right at the beginning too.
Oh, I see.
So they started step one as soon as it was around. And they started talking about new developments and rezonings. They said, okay, if rezonings are happening, it's gonna be this.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So you start with the rezonings and then drag everybody behind after a while.
Yeah. So, but they were doing things before STEPCO came along.
All right, so what kind of, how much do we need? How much time do we need to go to step 3?
I don't know, I think it might be a couple of years, but I think we could probably pull it off in a couple of years.
Are there any particular challenges that you know of or that you've seen that could be important for us to watch out for, up to envisioning them?
I think it's finding a way to get voluntary, like basically
Yeah.
buy-in into the project to
So
STEPCO.
information
Yeah.
and incentive. And
Incentives possibly, also having some examples of
concrete.
basically peers doing something similar, like one builder does a project and they actually see, you know, what was different, what does it look like, what was the process of doing it. There's a bit of rethink, like I said, with planning these things and also having the conversations with property and homeowners. Because 90% of the projects that we see built on Bola are custom built for property owners. They are not, there is speculation building, but not very much. It's not the culture that we've got. Where you take a city, it's almost the other way around.
Right, and it would be harder in a custom to follow the step code, because is that?
Not necessarily, it's depending what the homeowner would want to.
Right.
Because when they start to see what it really looks like, because the builder's the middle person, they're the ones selling these things, and they're the ones that are trying to talk to me about cost savings or different approaches to doing things. But you can also, when you see designs come in, you can see that some people have definitely made it clear to their designer or architect that they want a certain type of building, a certain type of energy performance as well. You can see
Right.
right away.
Okay, so I've been in a lot of public forums over the last few weeks, where all the people who are running for mayor and council are talking about housing. And we've got some new housing projects that are certainly being pushed as fast as they could. But they're going to be attempting to make them affordable, because that's a huge issue on Bowen Island. So if we were to ask people to get to a certain level of step code, how much would that throw a spanner in the works on the affordability side and the people who are trying to do it? Because we're trying to make things happen on the affordability side. And soon.
So what would be the definition of affordable?
Well, it's hard to know, but there's some programs with BC Housing where they would actually $100,000 per unit. But then there's an array of requirements, and you have to work with a nonprofit and so on. So there's so some would be subsidized, some would be lower cost. Lower market cost because they're smaller units and they're attached units and stuff like that. So that you're not requiring a lot of land, and you're not building as many walls and roofs as you would if you were building all single family.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, trying to make them affordable just by the building type, but also there will be some subsidized. So cost will certainly be an important part of it.
Yeah, and then of course the ongoing.
Then you've got your
operating costs.
maintenance costs,
Yeah, so, and that if you're able to look a little bit longer term.
Right.
You're going to see more payback in that regard as well.
Right, if you're only, it's like a 20% improvement in your energy consumption. Hard to know, actually, you have to sort of do a fair bit of math to figure out. But
Yeah, and it's not just
compared to
thermal
capital costs.
energy consumption, it's mechanical, it's lighting, it's all the pieces that come up. Because you could have the electrical requirement for a building go to 10% of their typical.
To what, sorry?
By only 10% consumption of a typical building.
Wow.
Because of the lighting,
Yeah.
the no need for heating systems,
Right.
mechanical systems, they're much more efficient. The appliances, they're much more efficient. You add all those things up, and then you can actually drop your consumption significantly if you go to a certain level. So BC Housing is actually a big supporter of this, and some of their projects, they are actually doing passive house projects.
And they may well, if BC Housing are approving things, they may well think more highly of the project if it's promising to be,
Yeah,
somewhere in the step code
that's right.
scheme.
And it might actually materialize as a requirement. possible.
Okay,
So, but there are a number of pieces that are required,
Yeah.
but I think it's a combination of clarity of expectations of what the step code is, the reality of actually creating a step code, higher step code, design and constructed buildings.
Yeah.
And then, having the infrastructure coming around it. Like I say, a lot of the buildings I see, I'm very impressed in, the quality of, and approach to these kind of questions. And also the openness of some wanting to do it. Because it does come down to dollars for sure.
Yeah,
It unfortunately still does.
I have a question about the sort of boundaries around a new building with regard to the step code. Thinking of, for example, rainwater harvesting. And does that type of benefit, which really the cost savings are felt more by the community-wide distribution system, let's say, when less water is being consumed by this building, if there's rainwater harvesting being used for irrigation, let's not even go to potable water yet.
Yeah.
Is that factored into this yet, or is that not?
In step code, no. It's about energy.
Okay.
That's where Built Green steps into it, our own lovely green building bylaw that we have that is not enforced in any way because there's no requirements for it.
The rezoning policy.
Yeah,
think
the
that's what's
rezoning
going, yeah.
possibly, but yeah, we have this great bylaw that suggests all these things.
Mhm.
We're seeing it though, but we're seeing in some projects where they hear about suddenly they've had a well on their property and the well went dry and they have no water left. Now what do we do?
Driven by necessity.
Right now, there's one house that decided, we're gonna put in a 30,000 gallon cistern out of concrete. It's a huge endeavor to put that in. So we don't wanna run out of water. For their $5 million house, they don't wanna run out of water. So it's absolutely huge. But they understand the value of it. So it unfortunately doesn't fit into this, but it does fit into some other ones. And also the realities of where we are. We don't have a Capilano water
So
system.
we have no right water, the wetlands.
Not at all. And I've heard about some water bills that some people get. Luckily, I don't have a big garden. Oh, $3,000 for a water bill, that's gonna change your gas pretty fast,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, it doesn't fit quite into this, but I think there might be other pieces. And it might be provincial, but it might be municipal too. We don't have
So I
to
see
start-
that, it could dovetail into other non-energy related.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where the, like, Built Green is one of the examples of the more holistic approach to the building itself.
Yeah.
For sure.
In an array of these public meetings, there have been lots of promises about cisterns as well.
So kind of a two-part question. When you start to get maybe not the step 1 or 2, when you start getting into the higher steps, what kind of maintenance for the building? Is there different maintenance levels that you need? And say, the house is built, I need to, whatever, I punch a hole in the wall for a service or something.
Mhm.
Does that become more costly? Is there
No.
something?
I don't think that would become more costly. Your building envelope
Yeah.
becomes a little bit more complicated when you're doing these buildings.
Mhm.
A lot of times it's layered insulation
Right.
and air barriers in different places.
Because I'm assuming you can't just like blow a hole in the wall for something. Like there's membranes and things that you have to patch. And,
Exactly, but in the old houses, we should have done that too.
yes.
It wasn't the law.
For sure.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more complicated with the building envelope itself, if you want to add on or you need access for something.
Right.
But the other piece where the equipment can be a little bit more sophisticated, but in general it is. Like, can you get a heating system that's not somehow computer electronically controlled?
Mhm.
So like the HRV, once you look at it, it's just fans and this little white box and the air goes through and I paid $2,000 for that. Right, so the controls are more about fans and timers and that sort of thing, but the mechanics itself, it's fairly simple. But you have to change filters and it's not just having a furnace or electric heat and what you call the chimney sweep once a year and
Yeah.
that's it.
So it's just kind of a different type of maintenance.
Different type of maintenance, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have your furnace serviced every year, but you might have a service plan where you change filters or you change, you might have to look at some of the electronics. But unfortunately, electronics, when they fail, they can really fail.
Yeah.
Then you can be stuck.
Mhm.
But that could be your refrigerator, it could be your car, right? Or dreaded your phone.
Other questions?
Another related question. Are wood stove heating systems anathema to this?
I say no. I think they fit. The wood stove on my place, though, I think the door is that big, about as small as one I could find. It doesn't, like with passive house design buildings, these are the ones that don't require heating systems. A conventional house could run on about 1,500 watts of heat, which they say is basically a hair dryer, which you don't want to do.
I don't have one.
But it's,
I do.
there you go, then your heat's warm.
Then you're
also
heating
warm.
out.
But you can still have some heat, and also you have to live. You have to live the lifestyle that you like, and I like having wood stove. So maybe you don't need 8 cords of wood and a massive burner, but you can have a very small, efficient one. Some of the units actually have direct vent combustion air, which is fully controlled, so it's only using it when the machine is on, and that can be ducted, and that's controlled when you talk about the air envelope of the house. You can control it. That's the whole idea of creating the type building, is that you control the area, but you're not restricting it. You're not going to suffocate it. Basically, it's a plastic bag or something similar. But I think it still fits. It's just the scale becomes a lot less. You don't have to have it. I have not lit mine this year.
Right.
I'm not in a passive house building. I just have a building that was fairly tightly built. It's not very big and it's insulated. I haven't even lit a fire yet. So it still fits into it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was really good.
And in Europe, they use them quite a bit more, and they use pellet stoves and that sort of thing. It totally fits, but it's more about how large it needs to be. And sometimes you use it for hot water too, a bit of preheat. Right. So it become more like a boiler or boiler jacket. So it would still fit. Also, having that secondary heat source if your power goes out, you nice to have something, right? So you're not, because if you otherwise you're quite connected to electricity. Even with all those photovoltaics on the roof, the power goes out. There's only so much you can do.
Do you have other questions? We've taken our 45 minutes, which is pretty perfect.
Are you finished your presentation?
Not even close.
No,
But
okay.
Sorry, you are finished? Or?
no.
Oh, go on. Keep going. I thought we were at the optimum.
You can pull me off the stage anytime. There might be, I can zip through some of this stuff.
Okay.
Part of it is a little less important or detailed, but your questions are more important than I guess. So here they're just talking about step 5, where there's some kind of lateral connections to certain levels of other programs, because that's what's happening right now. There's so many different programs, it's hard to understand what's what. So then there's a few parts about what the step code. We're talking about envelope efficiency, which is basically the blanket around the building, the air control and the thermal insulation from floor, walls, and roof. The equipment efficiency and the performance-based, meaning it's not prescriptive. You don't do this, you have to achieve this. Let's figure out a way to do it.
Right.
I think it opens up many more options.
I think so too,
So they talk about losses and gains. So losses through air tightness, so leakage, but also just thermal performance, actually heat radiating through assemblies, but also gains. So solar gain, it's kind of nice when you get the sun gleaming in your house on December 21st and filling your room with sun, because it's lovely to see, but also to feel, and actually can heat your building. But then providing, in that design in the summer, providing shade. Also internal, like people. You put some people in a house, like why is it so warm in here? These people are little furnaces. Schools are great for that. They bring in hundreds of little furnaces every morning, and suddenly the place is warm.
Parties too.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like, who turned the heat on?
Public candidate affairs.
Yeah.
All kinds.
All candidates meetings.
Yeah.
Just have one of those if you're running out of wood. Energy use for domestic hot water is a big one. It takes so much energy to heat up water, and we use quite a bit of it. So that's a tough one. Ventilation systems, though, if they're efficient and they're constant running, they're not as bad. Lighting. Even fluorescent tubes are not very efficient, but the LED lighting options and applications that we see now are not endless, but much more diverse. And just better for us as humans, you know, our eyes and everything else, as well as the energy efficiency of each building. So the compliance piece, energy modeling, is this new piece that's added to the puzzle. And that's where I'm going to get some pushback is, oh, I don't want to add another person or cost or however they describe it to the project, even though with a proper energy model, you can design around it and actually create improvements. You can actually reduce cost of things. But that's a big education piece. The air tightness testing, that's the blower door test right there. Where there's just big fans and some controls on it. And then non-prescriptive, that's the building code sitting there. Because building code is basically a prescriptive manual for so many things, but the energy performance, there's different ways to do it. So yeah, touching on the similar programs. They're talking about some of the other organizations where, some municipalities, where they're at right as of 2017. And Sparwood is one of the ones what we were looking at. They've created some bylaws and incentive programs that are quite interesting. And Sparwood's pretty small. I think it might be smaller than Bowen. Very small place. But yes, City North Van has been the leading edge of all of this. So they're a great resource, right? They've been doing it longer. There's a lot more systems in place. So, and because I used to live there and I've done development and building work there, and I still have colleagues there that are connections there that I can get information from. So that's helpful.
So Greg, what are the little acronyms or abbreviations at the end there? NRZ and THRZ?
I think that's what they're doing. Like the Sparwood is the building permit rebate. And then City North Van is
Rezoning. RZ is rezoning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have
Townhouse
a.
rezoning, I think is.
I think it's townhouse rezoning. They have a neighborhood which this is where I used to live. I still have my house that we're doing a project is called Moodyville, and this is a neighborhood where they've rezoned it from single family to multifamily townhouses, and there's this incentive program. So I don't have to connect to the Lower Lonsdale Energy Corp because of the type of building I'm doing, as well as the size of the building. So this was like a national story that this Moodyville is going to be the first passive house designed neighborhood in the country. We're pretty far along and we're very aggressive in what we're doing. We won't actually do passive house. It's passive house design, but we'll be step 5. I don't know if there's going to be any because they threw all these other things in there that essentially made it impossible to pull it off. So, but that's some of the things that they've been doing. The rezoning piece is a big one, but City of North End is new single-family residential as of I think this summer. Is what they did.
And I can send these out to you guys because I think I've saved some of these examples if you want to have a look
Yeah,
at them.
this is available, but also like that list of
Yeah.
municipalities, what they've been doing and when.
Yeah.
It's
all
right on
there.
the website.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, who's doing what, when,
Yeah.
and some of them are talking about incentive programs, some are just talking about rezoning. It's like Vancouver, so if you're doing it, because we told you to, that's how they do things.
So for Sparwood, they have a rebate, so how does that kind of?
I think you might remember reading, I think it's about a $500 building permit rebate
Okay.
to support lower door testing. And I thought that was a great way for us to look at doing it, and this is one of the questions I have for your community is some ideas of incentive programs. But that might be something, especially when you start looking at these costs. Like if you can cover part of the cost, you can take that resistance out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So, oh, it's going to cost more. Well, if we can do this, it's harder to do. Well, if you understand what it is, when you engage with an energy modeler, some of these other pieces,
Mm-hmm.
you can find the benefit. And we're also dealing with homeowners too. Not directly, unfortunately, as much, but it's not the builder's dollar we're talking about. This is the idea, float it with the homeowner. Right.
So just understanding the energy modeler. So I'm a builder, let's say, which there's no way that I am, but let's pretend I am.
Just for tonight.
Just for tonight. So in order to, I've got a bunch of homes I'm going to build over here, but I'm going to have to go find an energy modeler.
Yeah.
And are they around?
They're all on the island, of course.
North
It doesn't matter where they are.
Because they probably do it online anyway.
Absolutely. I've never met mine.
Okay, there we go. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah, the passive house, other consultant I was using, he was back in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Or Germany,
Okay,
wherever it was.
all right.
Per email, you
Yeah.
figure out the times, you don't need to. They basically take your plans, they do some analysis, and they send you feedback. It's not, it doesn't have to be one-on-one.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
But the actual
sure.
testing is.
That has-
The
yeah.
actual testing.
That's-
So what they do is they come up with the design model, and then they have to make sure, they have to provide some evidence that it's done.
I see.
So they might do a couple of site visits, they would do, or depending which level you're going to, if it's step code 1, they would just say, lower door test, here's the result. Step code 2 and 3. it might be
And
done.
but with you as a resource on the island, like you'll be the one who's checking out to make sure these things are, no?
Yeah, so in some regard, but that's not quite my role.
Okay.
As a building inspector, I'm making sure they're following building code when it comes to energy performance. So that's one of the pieces I'm trying to get involved with through this steering committee is, well, what's our role? We're starting to really figure out the energy model's role and where the architects and builders are
Yeah.
and the municipalities, but also like my role, how it fits. It's a little bit harder because I have to understand it.
Right.
Like I know a lot about sewerage systems now because I've had to get involved with that. But you have to understand it, but I can't be the expert. Because some people even ask me, well, why can't you do it? It's like, well,
No.
a little bit of a conflict of interest, let alone it's a whole skill set.
What comes to mind here is that, for example, in my line of work, the planning department has a list of specialists whom they can refer an applicant to, so maybe it's that type of.
Yeah, so we function differently than the others, and it's fantastic to be able to have a list like you and your colleagues and sewerage inspectors, right? Because we don't have any on the island either, so we've had to find them that actually are certified to do it. Having a list, that's something we can do as a smaller organization. We don't provide preference or anything. We say, this is a list that we have. So in the cities, they just totally shy away with that because they get pushed back, I guess. Probably.
Right, because it's perceived as.
Yeah.
Favoritism or whatever. Yeah. So we try to find the information. We just basically, if we can type it onto a sheet, we can give it to you and then decide what to do. Because one of the questions comes up, energy model, how do you find them? Well, there are links on the website saying this is how you find them. CHBA is a good resource. They have an organization of their own. That's some strange acronym, I'm sure. So then you can find them generally, but the other way to find them is through reference from others who we worked with, what they like. Well, they were great, they would just cost me twice as much, or yeah, they're fine, but you can't get a hold of them, or just here and there, they're just better. So that goes with that. But there are other, for sure. There are lots of them. Do you know the name Rob Pope?
Heard the name.
He used to live on Bowen, he said. He's my energy model. I've never met him. I said, oh yeah, I used to live there. He says that this building somehow is designed to be higher energy performance than its day. Going on his word.
You wouldn't know.
As the fan comes on.
Yeah. So, City of Vancouver, residential building steps 2 and 3. I'm not sure what the squiggly line means. They just go through some different local municipalities that have, rezoning policy. That's a leverage piece the municipality has, right? If it's going to be new rezoning or subdivisions, that's how we've got some of these other things happening before. But that's how you can start to make it happen. City of Vancouver. See, they talk about a green building permit rebate. Surrey, Campus, Agassiz, which I didn't realize before. And a lot of them are quite small municipalities too, and others I just have not. Like I don't see the Okanagan municipalities, the larger ones on there, and Prince George and things like that. Another thing to know too, just as of September, the metrics, so the technical guidelines they've established for the different steps, they've had to revise because the energy modelers are the ones that really discover this. When you start designing a small building, you take the thermal performance, so when it's smaller, it's harder to improve thermal performance compared to the volume of the building inside. Right? That ratio is important. The second piece is the mechanical. So if you're going to have a kitchen and a bathroom, and there's 4 of you living in a house, and your house is this big compared to this big, your percentage of mechanical energy consumption is huge. So you just build a super big house, and your energy efficiency and mechanical consumption is way lower, even though the total is more. So they had to make some changes so small buildings can perform and achieve certain levels. Colder climates, there are some variables that had to be adjusted slightly, even though in general, like in Winnipeg, you just don't build a house with 2x6 walls with bats in the wall. You just don't do that. It's freezing cold. But also some of the big buildings they're discovering, they're so big, you put it into step code, it's like, oh, look, this building is step 3 and it's not even made building code, just because of its sheer size.
Yeah.
So they've adjusted those and made some changes once they were rolling this out, and that's just what it says in September. So again, like it changes, but it's changes for improving compliance and achieving those goals, which makes sense. Like it's a tiny little building. You're living super small, but you still have a kitchen, and you still obey that on occasion, and all these things that anybody might do. But a larger building, it changes quite a bit. And that's they're just referring to the step code council there. They're the ones that make these final decisions, but they take feedback and information through at least steering committees and the energy modeler conversations, etc. Kind of the on the ground. So they've added this question section. I actually wrote these questions because I wanted to ask you some questions as well, and it relates to what you've been raising today. Is how does this work for some of our goals for Long Island? And that's might be part of why you asked me to come today, but also I'd like to know what you think and what you've learned about it previously, where it might fit. The second one is the support for adopting something in advance of the mandated date. I think the first step is 2020. I didn't write it there. I was going to put it in there. 2022 was step 2, and 2020 was 7. And I can get you that information. It came from James through Maureen as well.
I think I might have James, is it in James's presentation?
He sent out like a bit of an update a little while ago.
So it's recent, it's changed.
It's recent. These conversations, it's not in concrete yet, but that's basically what they say. They're thinking, okay, what's the timeline really? Like step 1, I'm quite sure that has been established. I should write better, but I just know it's coming really soon and we need to get on it before we're told to.
Yes.
It's not gonna work. It's gonna be mayhem if we're just told to do it, and so we have to figure it out, and I have to get others to figure it out. It's not gonna work.
Yep.
Nothing works that way. So that's kind of the tentative timeline. Like 2025 will probably be step 4. 2025 or 27.
You said 27.
2032. So no, I think it's 2024 might be step 3. 2027 step 4. 2032 step 1. That's the goal. I'm actually quite impressed at how thought out this system is.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, and I haven't gone through too many, but like curriculum changes and this, some things just kind of come out, and then you think, what just happened, and then it changes again. I don't get the sense from this one because it fits in with a lot of the other experience I've had from higher energy performing building design and construction, and I think it's quite thoughtful.
Yeah.
And it's being pushed through by the province, which we kind of have to follow, but it's not just a single government that's been doing it. It doesn't feel like a government thing. It feels like like environmental policy and like a people policy, rather than saying, here's going to do that.
Performance
like a
based
building
rather than regulatory, rather than specific.
Yeah, and trying to achieve something that, well, it's essentially achievable. Right? These are achievable.
Yes.
With a little bit of
Okay, I'm starting to get a little anxious about time because we've got about another 45
That was
minutes
it.
we need to work on. But this is, I want to see if we have any more questions because, we'll be, like, these are good questions, ones you've actually asked. And the last one particularly, how do we get participation? We need to think about that.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing some feedback on some ideas of that, because then it can roll into some policy.
Yeah.
And the timeline question for me was very good because it is timely. With the conversations since my day 1 I've been here, we need to talk about these things and we need to start working our way towards it.
Do you think after we've looked up the work plan, then we can run by
I think so.
the section that's
Well,
new and
The way I mean, we talk about
Like
how
what
we
they wanna
work
do.
plan. We can talk about how we, but I don't think we would be so, you know, in our building and step code one would say, well, we're gonna be at such and such by such. I think it's more we'll figure out, you know, we'll have a working group or whatever, a group of people look into the, you know, look into the website, find out what builders, you know, another, we need to develop a bit of plan rather than just say, oh, it's going to be such and such by such and such. Figure out how to do it.
Do you feel the building community knows about this?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't something that's, there's gonna be a builder somewhere, it would be fair weather, that's like, I haven't heard of this. Like, they're
They're
aware.
No, there's a pretty high level of awareness because it's like they know it's coming.
Right.
Sure. Some are totally keen, and others are like, oh, it's coming.
Yeah, but it's a case of buy-in, it's not a case of education.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
you wanna educate them, but they know that it's coming.
Yeah, it's not like the low level awareness. It's
Yeah.
The education piece is this is how you can achieve it. This is how realistic it can be. Yeah.
How long have you been working with this ongoing?
I've been in this job since February 2nd.
And so, and this information is the first time you really put it out?
No, no, I was learning about it beforehand, because especially when I was, like, some projects I did in North Van, and then the Passive House training was very much similar to this.
And so, in the past few months, this is what you've been doing, is up to the first?
Yeah, ever since I started talking about this with builders, with planning department.
So it's all, you've already been putting it out there?
Yes,
saying,
yeah.
It's
Because
not
I,
fresh.
no, it's not fresh. I also get the question, oh, what is this, you know, what's happening, when are we gonna do it, are we doing it now? Is this, yeah, they get a lot of those questions. But they're fully aware, and I think too that once we actually set up some policy, so it's a little less, how do you say, there's more confidence in making it happen. Because there's no date, it's always just still coming, there's no plan. Right, it's a plan, a lot easier.
Okay, well, Glenn, that was excellent. This is really very valuable for us.
Good.
to have
I'm
some
glad.
work we're gonna do.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm willing to stay if you want through your meeting, or if you want me to go, I can go too.
You know, whatever you want. We're going to be, like, what we've got. We've got a
Curious
couple
about
of
what you
little
do
things.
otherwise.
Couple of little things on our agenda that then we're going to get to basically our work plan and looking at water, waste, building and step code, transportation, environmental protection mechanisms, and community action, and figure out what steps we're going to take, what we're going to do. We're going to do that in 45 minutes.
So efficient, it's amazing.
Okay, I'd like to move on then to 5.1 was climate action revenue incentive program, and you know, Maureen or Sue Ellen could have talked about that. What it is basically, I mean, I can give you a really brief overview. Maybe everybody's aware of it. I mean, this, if you just read this, it describes the program, and basically what we do is all the money we pay in carbon tax on Bowen Island, they figured that out from some data somewhere. If we've done a bunch of stuff on climate change and fill out a report and say we've done this and that, they give us the money back. And that was what that's what the money we were able to put towards your project, putting some solar, putting some charging stations and potentially a solar panel on the roof, something like that. Okay, so that's what we'll need to do. And then if you look on page, I forget, there's Bowen in here. They've got large communities, small communities, medium communities, Bowen's in the small communities. And here it is on page 5. And it's got a nice little picture of the knick-knack nut.
Oh, yeah.
And talks about, you know, what we've been doing. So we will need to do this again. When we did this for 2017, a group of us, I was involved, we were just going, Maureen led it, we came up with all the things that we've done, and we filled out a document and sent it off. And so we'll need to do that again, presumably for
Annually.
2018. You can do it annually, that's right. You know, the win is we get another $4,000 or $5,000.
So that exercise happens in early 2019?
I don't remember when it happened, I can't remember. I guess it must be, you know, right after the end of the year, probably, yeah.
I think so. As I recall, one of the climate action the client conversations was geared around that whole thing.
Yeah,
I want to
that's
say
right.
that it was January, February.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we will need to do, so that's all we need to know. Now you can have a look at this doc, it's quite interesting, and, you know, there's lots of communities who are doing interesting sort of projects that we could learn about. The next thing I wanted to do a quick update on composting. So, you know, we had a great presentation a month ago, and then you might have seen a note that Louise sent, I think, to all committee members saying, okay, this ain't happening right now. So I said, Louise, can you give me a call, what's going on here? And it's actually not bad news, it's good news, it's fine. It's right now, we're, it's a new contract, I think it's 5-year contracts, I'm not sure, it doesn't matter. It's a multi-year contract, and it's obviously a big issue. And so to try to fit this in, and it, I believe, is in December, so it's right now, the contract's due right now. So to try to figure out the financials of composting and get that into it will be too complicated. We just need to get the contract done. But the contract is open, or it's adjustable, so that, you know, we could recommend to council, we've got a section on waste here in our work plan, we could recommend to council that, you know, they look into this composting or whatever recommendation we make, and then it will go to council and, you know, something could happen. So the contract will be done, but it's open enough that that could be adjusted. Okay, so she's still keen on it, and I think we can still be keen on it, it's just, we'll have to address it as part of an adjustment. Okay?
That's great, that clarifies her email to the.
Yeah, it's
Trying
on,
to interpret there.
I couldn't
Yeah.
figure it out either, that's why I said, let's talk. She just gave me a call. Okay, so with that, we now move on to finalizing the work plan, item 5.3, which was supposed to start at 8 o'clock, I think, so we're a bit behind, but we're not too bad, not too bad. So, I think Sarah's going to describe these docs. Do you want to describe?
Yeah, sure.
So we had a little workshop, the three of us, a couple of days ago, and we kind of came up with this, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, basically, it's just to go over some of the actions that you all had identified under the different categories, and then how we plan to undertake those initiatives as a committee, the staff time that'll be required, any kind of budgeting that'll be required, when in the 2019 period we think we get it done. And since one of our duties is to work towards the carrot goals and initiatives, we also put in there how the project that we're proposing would meet those goals, as well as how it would fulfill our duties, and then potentially other committees that might also want to take part in some of the activities that we're proposing. So that's what we have.
And you can see our terms of reference are put up at the top there, so you can see it's pretty open. I mean, we're, you know, we can invent our own things. We have to, you know, we have to provide recommendations when council sends us some stuff, but we can also initiate our own activities that we feel are within the scope, both with public engagement types of things and, you know, environmental benefit types of things. Okay, so I think, you know, the terms of reference are great, they're pretty broad. So what we thought we'd do then is, you know, we'd maybe just get up, we've got a little document you can work through, you can scribble on, and I think maybe we'll just work up on the whiteboard, so we'll, you know, we'll
I mean,
put the
it might
columns
be
up.
good to go through some of just like the bigger ideas, because I
Yeah.
know we, like at least for water, there's rainwater harvesting and other more general ideas, but maybe we could go through those and see if there's any.
Yeah, well, we thought for each one, like, okay, let's start talking about water. What do we want to do in water? Like, what problem are we trying to solve? Let's get a broad objective,
Yeah.
and then we've got 8 potential activities. Obviously, we're not going to do 8 potential activities. We got about, you know, 35 activities. We're not going to be able to do 35 activities in a year.
Right.
We're going to do
So what's our timeline? Is it to the end of the term or is it just this year?
1 year.
1 year.
It's the 2019 year, that was my
It's the
understanding, so
2019, that was
January.
that was our idea, yeah. And I think that's fair enough, you know, we're a new committee, we'll take on some activities. My experience with councils and with committees is usually take on too much. You know, we have a meeting once a month, so and we usually take August off, so we've got 11 meetings. 11 meetings, what are we going to achieve in 11 meetings? We can have subgroups go off and figure out step code, or, you know, some sort of water issue or something like that, or investigate the cost of cisterns or whatever. But we can't really, unless we do some work like that, where we go off by ourselves and investigate something in a little subgroup, we won't get a heck of a lot done, because in 11 meetings and
Yeah.
a couple hours each, you know, what the heck can we get done? Not a heck of a lot.
And
Okay.
whatever we propose will also go through council, so.
Oh, yeah,
It
because
would
we're
require
making,
council approval.
exactly, we're making, this is a, what, this is, what time, in terms of getting this to council, we want to get it to this existing council probably, right?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, it's the next council.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because I think they've got 2 weeks, I don't know.
Yeah.
2 weeks left.
I still thought it was the November 13th or the 26th meeting that they're looking at
Okay.
some of these things, although I don't know if all other committees actually have theirs.
We haven't done it in
prepared,
Rethink yet.
so-
There's,
Well, we
yeah,
got
Yeah.
Printec,
well, I think we're gonna work
Tuesday.
on the transportation plan.
yeah, we got the transportation
Yeah.
plan. Yeah.
So I was thinking later.
Okay, I mean, we're gonna see what we can do today.
Yeah, November some.
I can't imagine we will have a clear work plan at the end of 45 minutes. It's just not gonna happen.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
You know, We'll have a sketch, and we'll probably need to go do.
Step one's a clear work plan.
I think we can.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Since
Okay,
it's,
so-
since it's fresh on our mind, we maybe want to start with the building code stuff.
Yeah,
Because
that's
I know
a good
that
idea.
was
Why don't we
something
do
that
that?
was identified, and maybe even for you.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
Greg is kind of undertaking his own kind of consultation with builders, but if there's,
Yeah.
maybe we can discuss ways that we can kind of support that initiative and.
So let's look at our building code. We've got five little line items there. So let's just look at them for a sec with all that we've learned today. So glad. Let's just have a look and see. Okay.
Do you like that list?
That list?
The brainstorm.
Sorry, I was looking at this one here.
This one doesn't contain
Yeah.
anything.
I think, I mean, I'm just looking at them. Well, let's get some ideas. If we're, what do we want to achieve? Let's think about this for a sec. If we're, okay, so we're in a committee, we're going to make a recommendation to council sometime perhaps early in the new year, after maybe we've done a little bit more studying, that we go to some level or other by some time or other. And that maybe we'll have a bit of a plan that involves some outreach, education, and something like that. I don't know, whatever the things are we feel that are needed to get there. But okay, what high level goal, what would be, I mean, I've already written something down in terms of what I think.
I'd like the whole rezoning policy thing. That one kind of.
Okay, that's an
Yeah.
interesting way. So
So-
start with the rezoning.
Well, that's what we have. Right now, we have a green building rezoning policy. How much it's actually used, I'm not super familiar on that, but it's fairly dated and it references old standards that won't be applicable. So that was, I think that was my suggestion, because it's not really relevant anymore. So
Okay, I think
I don't know if we're looking at doing it via policy, like if that's in your
So-
thought, but.
And stop, go back where.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna go to the green building policy.
No, just go to your,
Okay.
the little chart you had.
Okay.
So where is green build, where is?
Energy
Oh,
Step
sorry,
code.
just
In the
energy
middle.
efficiency. Sorry.
Oh, it's this
yeah.
one here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Energy step code?
Yeah.
So I think the method,
It's
like,
energy
this
efficiency.
methods, one of them is a rezoning policy. That would go in there, I would think, a rezoning policy.
So.
I'd like to talk about
Building,
this one for a second. What do we want to achieve?
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah,
Buy-in from builders and buy-in from the public and home
Okay.
builders, or people who are building homes.
so that we get to what level by when is what I'd like to do.
Step one by 2020, because that's what it's gonna have to
Yeah,
be.
step one by a month from now.
Well,
Or you can use way sooner.
yeah.
I would,
You want the December?
I heard, okay, I'll.
Yeah, it would be early 2019 sort of thing, when it's
Yeah.
actually become policy,
Yeah.
but I think.
Where did I write these down?
Well, I know typically when you're introducing these things, there may be some public consultation
Yes.
involved, and
Mhm.
if that's the case, then, you know, that obviously adds to the
That's right,
timeline.
yeah.
So, although I know you've done some
Yeah,
informal
yeah,
consultation,
that's,
yeah.
it's important, like public consultation
Yeah.
as well as builder consultation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so let's just slap these down.
And you know, given
Yeah.
the context that there is already a green building zoning policy, the update, to some extent, adds efficiency to the process.
Right.
There's already some baseline.
Or do we need to worry about the policy because in 2020 it's happening anyway? We just need to get people educated and.
Yeah, but are rezoning, doing it in rezonings, when people are doing a rezoning, they know when you're rezoning a property, you're getting added value. You know, you've taken something that you're allowed to build 5 houses, and suddenly you're gonna be allowed to build 10, or whatever the heck. Something like that. And so then the issue is, what are you gonna give the municipality in some sort of a, you know, local benefits? And so that's when you kind of ask for stuff like that. You say, okay, we're gonna expect you to build it at step 3, or whatever the heck.
Okay,
Or something like
yeah.
that, in rezonings. And
So-
that way, you're getting some builders that are getting, you know, because then the developer of that property, you know, they wanna do well, and they, okay, we're gonna set a standard, and so they're basically teaching their builders. And then those builders will teach other builders, and you're kind of lifting, you know, lifting the level. So I think,
Okay.
oh, look at this, clever. Let's have a look at this.
So that's what we have now.
That's what we have
From
now.
2007, so.
2007. I was on council at the time, I think.
It might have been part of this then.
I think I did this.
But yeah,
Yeah,
references Bill Green.
Oh,
and-
that's right, that's what we
Yeah,
talked about then.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we should do is, I think we should refine this to reflect, a step code level 3 perhaps, or something like that. I think that's what I'd like to see. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, so that's where the bylaw rewriting can be
Yeah.
current and also set
Yeah.
new standards.
Set these standards.
And were you referencing the building bylaw that we have that also references like energy efficiency standards? Or
No,
this
it's
one?
just
Okay,
that
just
one.
this, okay.
Yeah.
It's a policy, there's no
Yeah.
bylaw.
Oh, sorry, that's policy, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's nice.
3, or is the one for 2019?
Well, this is a rezoning policy, so the rezoning policy you want to be, you know.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, aim higher.
Aim higher, yeah. And, you know, this isn't gonna happen tomorrow. We're gonna recommend that this happen. It'll take 6 months to, you know, do something like this. It'll go to, yeah, is this a policy or is it bylaw? Is it
Policy.
That's policy.
This one is a
Policy.
policy, yeah.
Okay, so policies.
There's different ways you can incorporate it, but that is a policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's
Written in
policies not required.
2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Old.
Old, when you're talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Should we have it like as a, for rezoning, yeah, I guess it has to be a policy, like to try to make a bylaw or something, it would be way too complicated.
Well, the other option, as Greg had kind of mentioned, what other municipalities are doing, are like the building permit rebates and other things like that. So we could look further into researching other options for
Okay,
new
excellent.
construction or
Yeah, research.
whatever.
Yeah, so that could be a,
Yeah.
that could be a policy, yeah.
Yeah, could be a policy
Yeah,
as well.
research,
Yeah.
research policy options that would be incentives for,
So go the same square or the next square?
next square.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another, yeah.
We can kind of refine this later. As
Yeah.
long as we get the ideas down, that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For, incentives for step code level, something
Yeah.
like that. We don't need to say what
Yeah.
at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting methods down, this is good. Okay, and
There's
this,
one in here is the whole idea of the contractor workshops and education.
Exactly.
Right.
So, yeah,
So that's.
tell us about that. Is that something that contractors want to go to workshops?
I think
Or do
they would, and that's
Yeah.
also something we've been talking about is preparing for and providing.
What, sorry?
We were talking about already about preparing and providing
Oh,
something
okay,
like that.
okay, there we go.
You had mentioned like builders breakfasts and types of that.
Well, yeah, that's one way, but also, yeah, just finding ways to get that engagement. Also, property owners, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
Going to
Realtors.
going to
Realtors would be
Realtors is a good
one, yeah. Nice.
good projects and stuff like that, yeah. Okay.
But even a big thing, I mean, you get the people who are building the homes, you get them to, like, I want a step 2, or I want
Exactly.
a step 3, or whatever.
Yeah.
And get them educated so that they're starting to demand it.
Yeah, so that'll be another line.
That's another line.
Public engagement. Public engagement
So
about
that's the.
the whole thing, really, so we get people excited about it.
Yeah.
Some people will want it, some people won't, just like the builders, but,
That's what-
to have some people who want it, that'd be great.
And the committee could help identify some of those stakeholders and help you assist in that. If that's,
Absolutely.
Okay, we're getting fair work on here, this is good. This is only one thing, one topic. I
Except
Yeah.
she keeps deleting a bunch of them.
Sorry, I didn't know that was the next
No,
square.
It's okay, see
Yeah, I
this,
think you did do it.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
It's too complicated.
That was coming back.
I'm sorry. I'm being hard on you tonight. Throwing you under the bus.
I just hope I got you really excited about it, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You motivated.
Yeah, so the objective of here, the objective of this one would be to, you know, it's like leading demand, basically, public demand, and engage, get public demand, get public
Yes.
on side.
Generate demand.
Generate demand, that's the best.
Yeah.
Generate demand. No,
That's for public use.
this is generate supply, this is generate demand.
Sorry, my phone didn't get by.
Oh, you're doing well.
No, yeah, the buy-in is good, also, skill development too,
Yeah.
and knowledge.
Get buy-in, skill development, good.
That's the same square? You guys gotta just say new
Yes.
square or
Yeah,
new
same
cell.
square, same square.
Same square. What did you say?
Skill development.
Skills development.
And the objective.
Rezoning policy, yeah. Okay, the objective of this, we haven't got an overall objective. Maybe it can go right here.
Oh.
Can it go right here? Is
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Oh,
objective of this,
right.
the objective of this is to have kind of leading, you know, pilot program, no, not pilots, but basically to have leadership, show, demonstrate leadership. Demonstrate leadership, yeah. No, that's this one.
Next word.
This
I'm
one.
so bad at this game.
No, you're doing great. It's a
I was
short
thinking Steph, I thought it was going up there.
You thought it too.
No, I think the objective here, the objective is, what do we want to achieve? What do we want to achieve by when? And that's what I'm gonna give it. This is what I want. Step 3, December 31st, 2020.
This is the top line?
That's just what I'm suggesting, yes, but achieve step 3, no, don't type it in, see what everybody says, like, maybe that's crazy.
Because in general, what you're doing is you're improving the design and construction of a building stock on the island.
Okay,
How-
that's
housing.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's what,
true.
that's the goal.
That is what I wanted to.
So that would be-
specific
Yes.
objective than that.
The affordable housing, the high-level housing, the any kind of cooperative or PC housing supported,
Yeah.
multi-use buildings, we've been seeing some more of those, just bringing all those up to new standards.
What about, could we, we're trying to build a new community center, a health center. Are these commercial buildings and public buildings are all fit in the same, different categories or?
It's unfortunately different categories, not in step code, and then we had a conversation with the architects and the modelers about that.
Okay.
I asked them to provide some information about how it's comparable to step code. It's part of the communication
Okay,
piece.
all
that,
right, we'll deal with that later. We've
yeah,
got something
but-
going here.
Yeah.
We'll keep working on this one.
Yeah. No, but
Yes.
that's also demonstrating
Sure.
leadership, right? Municipality demonstrating leadership, I think is one way to do that.
Yeah. So our objective then, we've got a couple of, like, I was thinking of a really concrete objective, like get to step such and such by such and such a date. But maybe we should have a broader objective, which is sort of what you were saying, which was that the,
Improve the building
improve the,
Stock, you say.
Yeah, housing,
improve the
residential
efficiency
housing stuff, yeah.
of residential housing.
Because this will start to spill into renovations too. Step code will start to be implemented in a little while for renovations. It's
That's
not
kind of
now,
the part, yeah.
but it will be. And also, just as now, modern code applies to renovations and additions to buildings.
Oh, okay.
So could we then say new and existing housing stock?
That would be an awesome objective if you could run it that far. I think they both need to be addressed.
Yeah. Good.
And what about under policy options? Demonstrate leadership, our objective for that is, it's sort of identifying options, opportunities.
Yeah.
It's sort of like creating like regulation though.
Maybe that's the get buy-in, and the next one is the skill.
No,
Well, the purpose of the researching policy options would be so that we can use something,
use
we
them.
can do something
yeah,
with it,
we
right?
can do that, to find pathways, basically, looking for
Yeah.
pathways to implement it.
Yeah,
Identify pathways,
Yeah.
identify implementation pathways.
Yes.
There we go.
I like the van thing.
So, do we want to have somewhere here how far we're going to go by when? Like the idea, because I asked you when could we do level step 3? And you thought, you know, we got all the North Shore, we're already doing this, so why on earth, how long does it take to catch up to the North Shore? How about 2 years? Like 2 years from now, because I think you said 2 years, so that's why I wrote December 31st, 2020, is that we have step 3 of the building code for all new buildings.
I think that's a good strategic action. Just, that's, yeah.
Sorry, what's
So that'll be
where?
another, that'll be another.
New box.
New box, December 2020.
Do you think that's a realistic?
Yeah,
That was my,
yeah, is that realistic, or are we
Do you
shooting
want to say
ourselves?
politically or community-wise or
Yeah.
otherwise?
Yeah.
It's a great goal. Is it realistic, achievable? I think it is if we put things
If
in
there's
place.
Yeah.
We have to play catch-up because we've
Yeah.
been sitting here for 2 years,
Yeah.
or 3 years doing zero.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think the pace will have to be a little quicker, but I think it's achievable if there's a desire to do it. Because that's where it comes down to the
Yeah.
adoption of it.
I,
Because
you
that's,
know,
that's a
I
council.
don't want us to be sort of seen as kind of crazy people out there with stretch
I
goals that
think
are
that's what he's,
going to get everybody upset, with so much of a focus right now on affordability.
Mhm.
So and obviously, from an operating cost, you know, it is more affordable, but you're putting up the capital cost, and most people object to putting up, to paying more money on the capital side, and they're sort of unaware of the operations side.
Especially the thing you
Just
just
how
have to
things
see.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't
you
see
can
it.
see one, you don't see the
Step
other.
code does not specify granite countertops or appliances. And only the efficiency of them, right? So,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a big uphill battle. The 2020 is very ambitious. I know that step 1 will have to be in place and get people used to the new language
Yeah,
for a little while. Step 2 is almost a stumbling step.
yeah,
I agree that the step 3 should be the goal.
Yeah.
Step 2 will just be, it's like a placeholder.
that's what, my conversation with James Blakey was kind of
Yeah.
the same way, yeah.
That's kind of my thought on that, because the step 2 is just a little bit better. It's not significantly.
well, step 2 doesn't come in until 2022, maybe
Yeah.
Mandated though, right?
mandated. So what if we say, because my thought when I look at that is, that kind of, people are gonna like shy away from it, like we're
I agree.
getting a bit too much.
We probably are.
But, so what if we say, step 2 by December 20, that puts us a year ahead of the mandate, and then we can say step 3 by 2020.
Well, what I did here is that step 2 is like,
Oh,
oh, it's okay. Just gonna pick someone up, pick my wife up, but it's an intermission, she's at Sherry's show tonight. Intermission now, I imagine it'll be, no problem. That step 2 is kind of, meh, why bother? It's better to go for step 3.
so,
Give yourself more
especially
time.
and I agree, like shooting higher, I'm always,
Yeah.
like I generally,
Yeah.
but also you get momentum.
True.
By like, hey, we got to step 2.
That's a good point.
And step 2 doesn't seem like it's a hard thing to achieve once you've got to step 1. That's my thought.
Let's see.
I'm good with going for
What do
step
you-
3.
Yeah, what do you think? Is step 2 feeling like, okay, yeah, we're getting there, or we got to something that's really not even worth getting to, or what?
I think step 1 and step 3 are the two to focus on.
Okay, step
That's
1
my
and step
thought.
2.
And your objective, I think, is to get to something that's substantial and also
Yeah.
somewhere close to other
Yeah.
jurisdictions.
Okay.
I don't think step 2 is a goal.
Okay,
Step 1 is a goal,
yeah,
in shorter term, I think step 3. And
Well,
how that looks afterwards, maybe we need to do step 2, or
Yeah.
step 1 for a while, prove it, educate, get buy-in, and say, step
Let's do
3.
it.
And maybe step 3 realistically would be 2021,
yeah, okay.
but taking the middle piece out of the conversation, just
Okay,
a
so let's
suggestion.
change 20,
do you want to go to
Yes.
mid-21 or something?
December 2021,
I like the
Three-
2021.
Yeah.
The December.
yeah,
Yeah.
3 years from now,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Should we
It's
stop?
just terrible doing it at Christmas.
Yeah, December 31st, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
December 1st.
Yeah, but it might be fall of 2021 or something like that, when it's, you have to think about when things are happening.
That's true.
Yeah, fall. Start building.
easier to implement because it's kind of like, yeah, you throw it out there and then you close the doors for a while
Yeah,
and then we
Okay.
see what happens.
fall 2021.
Yeah.
Should we have a step one by, December this year? Is that what we should?
It won't, it's not realistic,
It's not realistic.
no, because step one is probably gonna be harder to adopt than step three.
But is it realistic by the end of 2019?
Before that, I think springtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Like
we
6
can
months
say-
from now, if it's in place? Yeah, I think so.
Spring, you say?
Yeah, so like April or something, but spring 2019, I think is achievable. I also think, what if there's an appetite to do it? For the second council meeting? Hopefully these conversations are happening with the new council. And then it fits within that. How long is the council gonna be in, 2018 to 2022?
Yeah. Good point.
So what
That
about,
is a good point, actually.
It is a good point.
So hopefully we
this
can
is
achieve that.
achievable
in this
council.
run, yeah.
That's right. And in fact, that's pretty nice, actually. That's something to send to council as a recommendation to achieve it.
Something you can
Within-
finish with your term.
Setting it for the fall of 21 means 1 year before. It's never try to achieve things for a politician, never try to achieve things in the last year, because when you're running for election, that's when you get criticized. Always better do a little bit before that last year.
Yeah.
Oh, the TV's on.
Because I think this is a package approach with
Yeah.
step code
Yeah.
in general and then making some clear objectives and goals.
Yeah.
so it's
Okay.
kind of like so these are the 2019 and then
Yeah.
this bottom one is just kind of
Yeah.
a general
Yeah.
overarching.
Okay, let's just, these are all pretty great. Let's just talk about staff time, budget, timing. We've got timing kind of, well, no, we don't. We have timing here, but not for these other ones. Carrot, definitely there'll be, we just put a tick box for carrot because
Okay.
this definitely will, they'll all probably, as soon as we get going.
We can fill them in, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, yeah. So let's think of staff time. Okay, Sarah. Like if we're gonna do a rezoning policy refined to reflect step 3, it means taking that document from 11 years old and redoing it. But the step 3 data is all there, like you don't need to get into sort of the details of it, you just gotta say,
Mhm.
I wouldn't imagine the drafting itself would take a long time, but I imagine if there's some engagement and internal staff review and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
there will be.
There will be, yeah.
There
So-
will be, and then you'll have to
Yeah.
take it to council
Yeah,
and so on. And,
Exactly.
staff time is considerable, one thing that's really important, just thinking of what's gonna happen in the next bunch of years. We're gonna be building a new water treatment plant, we're gonna be trying to build a community center, we're trying to build health center. We got a heck of a lot of big fire hall, we got major projects, all of these will involve staff time. And so we have to be really careful with your time, we can't sort of just assume that you can do all kinds of stuff.
Do you think we should maybe just look at all the goals and then maybe?
Try
Yeah,
to
maybe,
do that later.
maybe that's something that we
Talk
could
about
do
it.
internally, I guess,
Oh,
with
that's
other
right.
staff.
Right.
I'm just thinking, because I don't know if I could think
You're
off the
right.
top of my head, and I don't
You're
think
right.
I would know either.
You're
what
right.
I'm wrong,
You're
but-
right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna join you on there.
Yeah.
So that's kind
We
of
have
the
to look into it
reality check.
further to,
That's sort of the reality
Yeah.
check, Sarah,
Yeah.
you take it, and
Exactly.
you have a look at it with Steph,
yeah.
and then then we'll come back and say, oh, looks like we were too ambitious,
Yeah.
we're gonna need a full-time planner for a year, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I honestly think if it'd be helpful, the staff time will be directly related to the appetite of council of
Yeah.
supporting it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If there's a goal to support it,
yeah,
it's going to be much easier because it's not going to be spending time to
yeah,
convince them and make it,
Yeah.
walking on eggshells, you don't want to push too
Yeah.
hard, or it's like, no, we
Yeah.
want to do this, it's a goal,
Yeah.
make it happen. I honestly think that would.
okay, I think this is, I
And
think,
since this will get reviewed by council,
yeah,
they'll be able to look
Yeah.
at this and say,
Exactly.
no, we're taking this off of your
yeah,
work plan or whatever.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, which is what's supposed to happen, we make recommendations, and
Yeah.
then they look at, okay, here's the budget, you guys are crazy, or this is pretty, sounds like a good thing. In terms of budget, you could do the same thing in that, none of these are,
I think so.
something like this, if you're producing materials or something like that, providing breakfast or whatever it might be, small budget could be involved.
Yeah.
The other, and same with the workshops, I guess, yeah, there could be materials involved, like nothing here, like there's no really big project. It's
No,
just
no, a little bit of staff time.
it's staff time
Yeah.
and so on. And then timing, we've sort of suggested some timing, but we haven't really, so we need to think. So I think, are we okay sort of leaving this one as we've got it? I think this is
Yep.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Sarah will take it and,
Yeah.
talk to Daniel and the
Yeah,
department and
exactly.
kind of sort of flesh it out a little bit, and then we'll talk more about it at the next meeting.
So is this community duty fulfillment, that sort of like who's putting their hand up?
No, well, so
Oh.
there's the list of things above, so we wanted to say
Yeah.
like, oh, it's meeting.
Oh, of the
it's
TOR.
Are we
D of
Okay.
this list
Yeah.
or whatever, and
So maybe.
I can pull some of those out. I feel like the main part that,
The
at
big
least
main-
personally, I wanted to get was what we want to actually do, and I
Okay.
can kind of
And then we
put it
can
together and you guys
move
can
those-
look at it once it's done
Yeah.
again.
And I can come help to
Yeah.
work on this too. I'm happy to sit down with you
For
on
sure.
some of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
We covered that one then.
That's excellent. All right. Should we do water?
Yeah, sure.
Here's the top of the list. Okay, let's have a look at all the things we've done there. Spend a couple of minutes on that. Okay. I guess what I can give you a little, I can give you a little bit of information of the kinds of things that the new council members have been saying in the workshops and so, or the forums that we've had. One, I guess, okay, I'm talking about myself. One of the things that I pointed out is some of that climate change data that shows that our summers are going to get about twice as many hot days and 20% less rainfall by 2050. That's the direction we're going. And just look at the dying cedars around. We know we're struggling. And I also went to one of the Fire Smart presentations, and it's a little bit about, oh my God, this is serious. And one of the things that several of the potential council members have been talking about is the idea of cisterns, because the water use in gardens is by far the biggest. This is where all and as you were saying earlier, we don't need to get into the whole potable part of it, because that's hugely complicated, and you get the health authorities and all that kind of stuff. But the other part of the cisterns, and Peter Williamson mentioned this in one of the forums, and the Fire Smart people mentioned, is if you need a battery operated pump and a sprinkler on your roof, and if you've got a fire coming, you do that, and you're going to protect. There's a good chance you're going to protect your house.
Yeah.
Another piece that I remember, I don't know if they spoke about this at the Fire Smart thing, but there was a comment made that we don't have the resource in order to combat fire,
Right.
period. And that if there is, even if there was a hydrant close to you, they would probably not drain the hydrant because it's well water that it's actually supplemented. So we really have to find resources in order to have, and this was the most obvious one.
Yeah. Because in the climate change data, it's much drier summers but wetter winters. So there's lots of opportunity. There's lots of water coming down. See if it's catching it,
To keep it.
keeping it.
So
So that's number 4, rainwater harvesting. Is that one? Oh, and number 2 and 4.
Dave, how large are those systems that they're?
Well, you can get all, you mentioned that
Yeah.
enormous one. But the ones that, like, they're selling some you see at the building center when you go by, is,
Yeah,
Okay,
they
just-
range,
yeah,
okay.
full range size up to 4,000 gallons or
Yeah.
something.
I don't know.
Maybe more than that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have multiples.
Yeah.
We're seeing them in houses. Like
Yeah,
from new
I know,
builds and
my neighbors built it.
tanks
New
within the house,
house,
somewhere in the
big
ground, but in the house.
Yeah.
Got full
My old
systems.
place, we built part of the basement, basically under the entry hall, it's a great big
Yeah.
14 cubic meter
Yeah.
cistern.
So could we, this is one thing that's been talked about at some of these forums, is encouraging. That's the only verb that's been used so far, encouraging the use of systems.
I think education on locations,
Mhm.
possible locations and stuff.
I mean, I know no more than what I've just said.
Yeah,
I'm keen on it.
I'm
I don't
keen
know
on-
what the sizes are, I don't know how much the cost will be, I don't know what kind of platform you need for it, like so they won't tip over and crush the ground or whatever, I have no idea.
So,
I
just,
understand.
here's a thought just on the, is encourage the word or is it increase the use?
The objectives increase,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. The green building policy touches on those things as well.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, water collection.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
So-
the policy's there, but how do you implement that?
yeah. Yeah, education, so,
You guys can tell me to delete anything. I'm just-
yeah, so I've done a lot of work on behavior change over many years on water conservation, on composting and stuff like that, and education is about the weakest thing you can do. You make things simple for people, like trying to sort of convince people to do things because it's for the good of the country, for the good of the environment, for the good, they're not very strong. You're way better off making it simple, making it cheap, making it easy, having a package that can be, all I have to do is this and then it'll happen, all kinds of things like that. Like on the composting and on the recycling, it's color-coded, simple, big lids, all kinds of things like that make it easy.
Yeah.
So that people aren't putting the wrong thing in the wrong place.
In that line then, would our overall objective underwater be to ensure that there's always enough water?
Good. Yeah.
Something-
Yeah, we know, that's absolutely, because we're getting drier summers, more people, but we need to make sure we have enough water.
That covers
Yeah.
consumption for various
Yeah.
purposes, including
Yeah.
firefighting.
We get that question a lot on the development side too, is
Yeah.
how much water do we have? Like how many more people can we have on the side? Is there?
Yeah.
So is that one of the things in
Yeah,
that is the question.
researching,
How many people could be on the
What's
island?
that?
researching need?
Which, yeah, that's falling under
Researching.
the,
Are there natural cistern opportunities beyond a couple lakes?
I've been asked that in the past, once that LiDAR topography was completed.
Right.
Okay, an examination of the island to see where could another dam be built.
Essentially, yeah.
And I think there are options. The thing is that we're so steep, we don't have big
Yeah.
valleys that are prone land. And then there's the issue of downstream flooding in the case of a dam failure. But that hasn't been researched fully, I just gave it some thought, as we talked about.
Would there be environmental issues that we'd want to worry about? I mean, if you're going to flood an area,
Lots.
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 But I just wonder if there isn't some sort of opportunity there if we could research it more.
Mhm.
There's always gonna be a cost, cost benefit, but I wonder if I don't know.
Well, interestingly, in the case of Grafton Lake, it has been raised the 18 inches that it's capable of giving in terms of extra volume. Killarney Lake is in a regional park. It may have some room, hasn't been researched. The dam has already been raised once. Yeah, when I first moved here, the old dam was still in place.
When was that?
So it was probably put in about 1990, 91, the new dam. And so that one it isn't used as a source right now,
No, it's not.
except for fish.
Right.
So that's the other thing. I think it's a very shallow lake, so there's not a lot of, we're getting into
Getting
analysis.
into analysis, but still.
But that's a good point, just looking for, it refers to the locations aspect that Denise is mentioning.
Yeah, because for 14 cubic meters of water and some sort of pump system, it's extremely expensive, right, to install. If there's a way to increase naturally some significant volumes to supply
Fire
conventional
protection,
systems,
fire protection, for example.
conventional systems,
Mhm.
gravity fed systems, etc.
Yeah.
So at least there's access. So if it's there, if it's not there, you can't get it.
So Steph, my suggestion here would be research reservoir opportunities,
Yeah.
and then the possible locations gets moved down to there. The education is almost always related, I think, to individual households or
Yeah.
projects. And education certainly can be up above, but without the locations,
Yeah.
it's already given.
Okay, let's talk about the methods for the first box then. Increase the use of non-potable water systems for fire protection and gardening. I mean, in terms of, the city of Vancouver and other places, they have those little bins like, and so on, but they're, one good gardening episode invented the thing.
250 liters.
What are they?
250 liters,
Yeah.
that's the big number now. That doesn't take long.
Yeah, rain barrels I tried them way back,
Yeah,
the end of the week was gone, I still
Yeah.
had a month of drought ahead of me.
exactly,
That's right.
yeah, yeah.
Didn't need like the whole backyard full of rain barrels.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one of the things we need to figure out
We
is,
need to figure out.
like, how much, if we're talking about a homeowner,
Yeah,
like what kind of volume do they need to reasonably get
okay.
through in their garden? But also, if they're gonna, if there is a fire and you need to sprinkle your house,
Yeah.
what
do
kind
you
of
need?
volume do you need to do
Yeah.
that?
So we need to do some of our own work here.
Yeah.
And so I think the method, strategic action, increase the use of methods, we need to spend our own time, research, work size, research size, cost, size,
And the
cost.
types,
The
the
types,
metal ones is
Yeah,
plastic
metal,
ones.
plastic,
Yeah.
We need to figure this one out. Research sizes, costs, options,
And also-
setup costs.
And also perhaps the effects on the environment. In other words, if a metal one, what's the effect to the ecosystem versus the plastic ones? That could also be part of looking at.
Would there be a difference?
Well, for some people, the plastic is not just something the neighborhood may not want to have. Where there's, a use for a metal one that has a lot less of I don't know, that's something, somebody mentioned that to me, and I don't know much about it, but,
Well, there's the BPA's in some places
Yeah.
and things like that. I don't know what effect it has.
because we have plastics issues that we're gonna be looking at, so are we increasing plastic, decreasing plastic? What are we doing?
Okay, so research size, cost, types,
Types,
materials, options,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Setup costs. Aesthetics, yeah, sure.
Aesthetics, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure, absolutely.
Remember West Vancouver, they ended up allowing sort of a commissioning graffiti
Oh,
on some big reservoir so they would blend into the hills.
Like
et
mailboxes.
cetera.
Mailboxes behind your boxes.
Yeah.
With the ferns that stay
And that's
kind
something
of
certainly
bored.
we would want to do as a committee rather than staff time. I think in terms of our general work plans, coming up with that kind of research, we shouldn't have Sarah do that, that's something we can
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
What Sarah would be needing to do would be looking at the policies, the bylaws, the kind of stuff that we captured. Just look at the water list again, what else do we want? Like water conservation, oh, the aquifer, the 7 aquifers,
Yeah.
the wells and so on.
1 and 7 are pretty close together, I think,
Yeah.
in data collection.
Data
And there's a related one there, which is a meteorological station, basically monitor our rainfall
Oh,
more than we have today. So we have a good idea of how
Yeah.
much have we, has it been a trend over time of, anyway, it's part of getting the database in place.
So this next one is data collection?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. And we might,
And the examples are, or the specifics? of
well,
or-
if we look at our report, one of our, in our information items is this note from Bonnie on July 12th on so it's provincial, I didn't realize this, it's a
Yeah.
provincial well program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's,
So
Big
does
thing.
anyone know more about it? Is the
Well-
province going to try to tap into the 7 aquifer? Like, seems incredible.
It's just the first one,
Yeah.
in place to date, and the others would need to be identified. And this one is so new that there isn't any data generated yet, but eventually one can go online and find out what the current water level is.
Right.
Presumably, I didn't check on that, some description of water quality.
And the
And
province pays for this?
Is there a link for
The
that?
province, why didn't the province pay for it? I mean,
It was in Bonnie's email. It was-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Email and report.
the email.
You guys all have email? Okay.
Time to locate and establish a suitable location.
And that one particular well is right at the entrance to Dallas Lane there, and beginning of Channel View.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so this would have led to the comment number 7, there is an observation
Yeah,
of each of the.
in each
7.
aquifers, and that's what, there are 7 aquifers over time, then we could establish an observation level in each aquifer, data collection, blah, 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 absolutely. So we need to follow up on this, I'm afraid I just don't know enough about it.
So I think that one of the hurdles, and I could be wrong, but it can't be on private land. We need to find it somewhere for the province to have it where, because the one up in Valhalla, that's not, it's,
I think it's in Rolas,
It's- right.
something like that.
so that's the stumbling block. I think if we can, as I recall, if we can just find where the aquifer is,
Yeah.
find some municipally owned property,
Right.
the province puts a well in.
Province will
Yeah.
put, well, it seems astounding,
And
doesn't it?
maintains it, and
They're expensive.
If, there's that, and there's also finding other existing wells that never got used, which there are a number.
right.
One of them's in that park, Buchanan Park.
Is it?
Yeah, the westernmost end of Buchanan Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's in the park, it's
in the
already
park,
in,
Yeah.
so we just tell the province about that one?
Well, it'd be a case of evaluating whether it's usable or not.
Right, yeah.
But that's an example of an opportunity to
Yeah.
get checked out.
Okay, so we need to, I mean, we're sort of clutching at straws a little bit here, because we have some information, but not a heck of a lot, so we need to figure out, we need to investigate how to implement.
So, I mean,
It's not
under
data
the,
collection.
under the
Well, it is,
Oh, sorry.
the objective is data collection
Okay.
in observation
Oh,
wells.
so the method is.
The method is,
Sorry.
like, we need to do some research.
So we need to identify what the aquifers are and then find opportunities.
What, oh, where, sorry, what?
Yeah, no, just listen
What
about,
the,
just,
what the aquifers are,
Where the
Where the
aquifers
where the
are.
aquifers are, and then maybe find existing wells within them or opportunities on municipal, other public land within those aquifers.
Yeah, because they could do it on ground land, that wouldn't be.
Yeah, and probably presumably be there too.
yeah,
Sorry, can you-
You Identify where the aquifers are,
and opportunities for,
existing or future
existing or
wells.
future wells. Um,
And I don't know if we're done with the wells, but your point about data collection on like rainfall can be really important if you could disseminate it to people and they know, like, I've had this much rain fall on my garden over the last week, I don't need to water it right now.
Yeah.
Or I haven't had any rain, I better water it now so that it doesn't get to the point where the plants all start to dry or start to die. So it's, I mean, if you know what you're doing, then it's good information to have.
Yeah, I think it's good to have it, for sure. It's, in terms of direct feedback to the gardener, it's really so variable, because we've got bedrock, we've got deep soils, we've got
Yes.
south and north exposures, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So
Yes.
it's harder to make that call. But really just knowing what we have and what's happening locally as opposed to West Vancouver makes sense.
So, a new category then, step data collection, rainfall. So Alan, what would be involved in doing that? Like how easy is it?
So the method would be, maybe let's call it, install a network of stations, something like that.
And the Muni already has one. I think they have one at Connolly Lane where you can just go and you can just, or, I don't know if the public can, but when I was working for the Muni, you just go online and it shows how much rain fell at that station. There you go. It's just good to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, what about another thing, in terms of water conservation for gardeners? Like we have a lot of gardeners on board, it's, it's a hobby for a lot of people. And it's really easy to waste a lot of water if you don't have good watering systems. Like it's really, there's also, low water gardens, xeriscaping, and then low water irrigation systems. We could just provide research and information on those things.
Yes.
So the objective would be to increase irrigation efficiency,
Yeah.
minimize.
Water use.
Decrease water
among-
use, yeah.
Decrease water use among gardeners.
Decrease.
Water use among gardeners. And so, yeah, and then it will be providing research and provide information on xeriscaping, and someone can spell that for.
It starts with an X.
It starts with an X.
Xeri.
Yeah, we missed you at the,
That looks good.
Close
Oh, I
enough.
missed the spelling bee.
Oh,
You weren't there?
yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't want to go anywhere then.
Never
You're
allowed
not-
that.
you're not.
it's with an I.
Oh,
Xeriscaping?
Xeriscaping.
Our computer was happy.
It was.
I think it's been, yeah,
It's spelling thing.
it's been nice to us.
Efficient irrigation system, something like that.
And proper, just gardening techniques,
Yeah.
things like mulching and having good
Mulches
organic.
and, yeah, don't overwater.
Yeah, organic content in your soil to hold the
Yeah.
water. And
That's right. We can work with the garden club on that
I
kind of
was
stuff.
just thinking that they have,
Presentations, like Will Husby presented 2 days ago on pots, it was really fun.
oh,
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
that's-
really great. Yeah,
Yeah, they have a lot of great speakers that come.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So we could bring in people like that, that'd be great. Okay, what else do we want on water? Are we pretty good on water?
Well, here's
We're
the
finding
other-
out how much
The
we
other thought
have.
is that we have to leave enough for nature.
Yes, that's really important.
And.
Yeah.
Trying to think about the
So
actual.
when you draw down your,
I think, I mean, not just, that's a valid point, that's great, but I mean, by doing these things, hopefully
We will be doing
we're
that.
indirectly doing it.
Yes.
But it's, I mean, it's a good point to get across to people.
For sure. What comes to mind is, for example, Grafton Lake or the aquifer at Blue Water or whatever, if development increases, demand increases, and beyond the actual recharge rate,
Yeah.
et cetera, we end up with problems, particularly if the lake creeks. So,
So
So
it's,
is that an objective or is that included in,
maybe it's a high, right at the top, when we
let's go
had,
back up there.
go right up to the top to our high level objective, what was it?
oh,
Ensure the development of
Consumption,
water
fire
for
protection.
consumption, fire protection, and nature.
and nature?
Yeah, there we go, yeah, covered
There
it.
we go.
well, we put nature first.
Put nature first.
Because if we don't have nature, we don't got nothing.
Put the support system in first, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
all right, this is good. Okay, now it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
How are we doing? Let's just think about this from, so we spent about 20 minutes on each, something like that, like we're going pretty nicely,
Yeah.
but we've got waste, we've done step code and water, so that's pretty cool.
We can. If we do one more, we're halfway through.
Yeah, I mean, transportation, I looked at transportation, a lot of that is already handled by the transportation plan.
So we'll say like support and
And
encourage.
it could be probably pretty easy to do that one. We've also got the parks.
Waste.
Waste.
So
Let's
going
look at
over
waste.
some-
Support the.
Let's just look at waste, that could be fun, and that,
That could be fun.
It's the funnest one of all, of course.
So, overall objective?
yeah, good point.
We want
Reduce.
to-
Sorry, so these are all the water ones we've ticked off then, that's, they're all. What's water school?
Water
Didn't happen.
school is, it's a program that's
Oh.
international. And what it does is it goes into different communities all around the world, and it's part of a collective understanding that our biggest resource is water. And it brings basic knowledge, basic education, but to kids in a very specific way that teaches them that they have to pay attention. And so because we have the Graftons, we have these aquifers, and I just thought it would be really a good idea to have a little bit of that kind of consciousness come to Bowen as part of our mandate to, create an environmental consciousness.
So how would you do it?
Well,
Are you-
I do have a personal understanding what I'd like to do. I don't know how it would work here. Is that because I'm in the process of helping create a collective at the Grafton
Right.
Lakes right now. And right now it's a garden plan, but we were talking about in the near future, like in the next year, creating a water school idea. So implementing an educational area that we would bring people in and finding out through FEMA and through the people who do it, educating ourselves on how could we bring a water school here. And so it would also bring tourism, it would do a number of things that could actually help us.
So is it is there something we could do ourselves by learning how to do a water school, or do we have to have international experts?
That would be part of the education.
Okay, so let's go
We don't have
to,
anything about education
Yeah,
in
so it makes sense to
here.
put it in as a.
Yeah.
we had one up top, didn't we, or?
I think we took it out because it was weak.
What
Oh,
happens
sorry.
is-
Oh, there, sorry. That's-
David didn't like
I
it.
didn't
But
like education.
as a general, like communication, education.
But go higher up, go right to the.
Hey, if I Googled
Increase
water
use of
school,
non-water
this
water
come up.
cisterns.
Most
Oh,
likely,
yeah.
there's a
So-
video on it,
See what-
Yeah.
and it's
I
quite
see- see where it
interesting.
says
It goes
research
through
reservoir
India, goes through,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
And
very
then under the method,
fascinating.
it says.
Yes,
that's
it doesn't
education
look like
of
much in
possible
terms of,
location.
it's
I think
basic,
that's-
it's so,
you
so
gotta-
basic.
I
It's
think
such a
that's
basic
correct.
concept,
Oh.
but
Yeah.
that's to
No.
me what's needed for the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've lost so much of
That's
the basic stuff.
identify-
And
right?
if we implement
Identify,
something so
yeah.
basic into the
Identify.
school, but
Yeah.
not in the school system, it's outside, it's gonna be
Method
on the
is
land.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
think
it
we
is.
could do some
Research
great stuff.
possible.
But
And
next does a lot of field
Yeah.
trips that
Yeah.
are like
Okay.
on the
To
island,
create,
Yeah.
and we don't have
Yeah,
enough
to create new
actually.
reservoirs.
create new
Yeah.
reservoirs.
So that would be a good one, and the garden club
And then
that
you want
fits
to have like an
totally.
education.
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
I can see a lot.
Okay, let's go order.
Gender
We were just collecting one thing here,
Yeah,
so.
I think it would be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, gang, how are we gonna collect it, put a new one in around education or water school, or?
So it's education on water conservation.
Yeah, something like that.
Or protection,
Or public
conservation,
awareness.
Let's say stewardship.
and water consciousness.
Okay, water consciousness?
And then
So, research, water schools, communications.
Denise?
Yeah, I'd love that. Research the concept of the water school, whether we want to do it, through a larger body and bring it in as a professional, grounding, or we want to do it ourselves, or,
and I would say link with Hicks and other schools,
yeah.
Yeah.
LPS, et cetera.
Okay.
Get the kids
Okay,
on
good.
board.
Okay, so let's go to waste.
Let's go to waste.
When I look at the waste
That's
ones,
fun.
I look at the gray water systems and I think, okay, that's too hard. But maybe everyone will disagree with me. It's like, it involves
Well,
public health and all that.
actually, this is a good question for you. Like, if you want to put a gray water system into your house, like, you don't really, you can't, I mean, you could, it would just be stupidly expensive to.
Yeah,
To
and
replumb
I think
everything.
the other, the potable, non-potable questions, it's the same thing there too.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do that. Larger projects can do it, like Emily Carter Institute and that sort of thing, they do that sort of thing. But in a residential building, I think the design and mechanical systems required to be able to do it.
Even from scratch?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
considered it with my house in 2010, and I just got scared away by the cost, because it's double plumbing for everything. So we-
Double plumbing, then you need an outside consultants, you can't just do plumbing, you have to do an engineering design because we're doing all these other things.
Okay.
It becomes like,
Long-term goal, especially for a multi-family
Yeah.
system, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
it's like, and like, geothermal heating systems, exactly the same thing. Oh, that's a great idea. It's just gonna cost you
Yeah.
absolute arm and a leg
Yeah.
to put in.
Yeah,
So it becomes just difficult.
yeah.
But maybe there are ways on larger scale,
Like
possibly.
Like a community center?
Like the what?
The
Community centers. That sort of thing.
Except
Leave
we're,
them alone.
it's true. That's right.
Yeah.
They're trying to get it done.
I don't think that's a good
The
idea.
whole project got put on hold.
That's more about water collection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about the
So I
sewer
agree
like?
with your idea to skip gray water for now, because
Yeah.
it's
It's really hard.
complex.
The 2020 plan.
but composting, obviously, we're keen on composting. What about biochar?
Okay.
Like, I read your stuff, it's really interesting.
That was a great video.
It
Hold on,
was-
what
It
do
was
you have in
awesome.
composting? We're gonna do something
Yeah,
with it?
well, I just got a tick for now, we'll come up with something. I'm just sort of trying to narrow it so we can put up
Okay.
an overall title.
And
Or-
so
yeah.
in case of biochar, we're basically turning woody waste into a
Into-
resource,
into a
right?
resource,
And
yeah.
happening to
Yeah.
sequester carbon and so on. And we definitely do generate a lot of woody waste
Yeah.
at each new construction site, let alone on the gardening, all that green waste that gets taken off the woody stuff.
Yeah.
All
Is
by
it
the
something
charcoal.
that you think we could do on the island in some way? Like, would it be a big system or homes could do it?
Both. It can be done.
All right, let's leave that on for now, we'll
Yeah.
figure out how to do it, okay?
It doesn't make biochar, no.
The biofuel for new municipal infrastructure, we learned we could do that, so that could be part of the composting thing, I think. But bird with more plastics and composting toilets. Composting toilets can be pretty important on the affordable housing side. Okay, you're saying no?
It's like-
Yeah,
It's just not gonna happen.
Vancouver Coastal Health would be,
They're just not gonna let it happen. Okay.
but it's a great question, I could help you research that.
And.
I get questions on all the time.
Yeah, in that regard, being an island community with limited water supplies, we have a strong case.
Yeah.
We happen to be so close to Vancouver and on the wet side of the Sailor Sea that, it's a harder sell at the regulatory level. But, and the technology certainly improved to where the odor issue and due to liquids and solids is starting to get, by the wayside. But as you say, once you've got Provincial Health Act and other regulatory agencies involved, it can be quite complex. So it's almost like a hybrid system, or the way it's workable. You can get a regular low flush system approved, and then on a voluntary basis bring in the composting toilet. The other thing that just came to mind is, I think of the non-flushing urinals, for example, which we see on all the BC ferries, installations, West Vancouver Public Works Yard, where it's gone. So for public buildings, there's an important water conservation and waste reduction measure to overlap there between those two. Anyway, it's sidestep there. So composting toilets, encourage, I suppose, while still complying with the other.
I guess you were saying that voluntary, like, I'm not sure what you mean. So can someone actually put one in, like if you built?
As long as you have a flush toilet, I understand you can have.
Oh, really? You can have one as well?
You can have one as well.
But that doesn't, some of the discussions around affordable housing are, sort of like more simple places often, like just a little cottage where you're not attached to it.
Right.
But
It's a tough one because composting toilets require a lot more action, maintenance, involvement of the user, rather than just squat and flush.
Yeah, the more the application when there is no other solution, when you don't have a reliable water supply at all, I think it becomes, otherwise it's an outhouse.
So if we're thinking of a one-year project
Yeah.
here.
2019.
Well, I think one of them would be possibly just looking into the what is allowed or possible.
All right. That's certainly good.
Okay, regulatory.
Okay, so let's.
Okay.
Composting,
I just was taking notes and realized we weren't.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, even though I think the answer is no, I don't know the answer. So I have to look into it, and it's something that I could actually help you with.
So, yeah, let's, I guess the way we did other ones, which is pretty cool, is we started putting the activities down. And then we sort of figured the objective, and then we went up to what's a high level objective, just by kind of putting things together. So, clearly the composting thing, the potential for biofuel, for using that compost, the biochar, composting toilets, research, support birds take more items. Do we need that? Is that,
Well,
are
I
we
think,
okay?
was that something to do with,
And they're taking styrofoam now.
They're taking styrofoam, yeah, they're
Oh.
kind of taking everything.
I know, that's what I said. They take.
Is that, like, brand new?
They're
Just
Very recent.
Yeah.
They're pretty
I've
well,
never,
They
I
announced
don't
it.
do the recycling, that's my husband's job.
Oh, I was gonna say, what? And you're on the
but
same.
I'm gonna have to inform them.
Yeah, no, I showed, I mean, there's some that they don't take. Like if it's hard styrofoam, like packaging,
they
awesome.
take.
But if it's
yeah, that soft
the
squishy
soft,
stuff,
squishy stuff, they still will.
they don't do that.
Thank you, Sarah.
Moving out, sorry, I have to catch the 9:30, but
Oh, okay.
this is great.
Oh, yeah, off you go, bye.
It's all downhill.
Thanks, Sarah.
For,
Good night,
Yeah,
Sarah.
thanks a lot, Sarah. So let's just do this one, because it's, I like to have 2-hour meetings, you know, people work next day and stuff like that, so let's try to do this. Let's go, action, so under methods, composting, so work with a waste contractor to implement food waste composting, right?
The oven.
Yeah.
What's that?
The oven.
Yeah, that, the one we had.
The one we
Let's
had.
just call it composting, you can figure that out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was there something about the product?
It's
too?
not a digester.
Oh,
It's just
It's a
a
dehydrator.
Dehydrators,
It
right?
doesn't,
I
it
don't want to
doesn't.
say oven.
That's what they call it. That's what they call
Oh,
it.
Igor?
Yeah,
Was it Igor?
We know what we're talking
I
know what
wanted to
you're
know
talking
something about the product. Was there some decisions?
But also, because I think Bonnie always had a good thing, which is get away from the whole concept of it's waste. Well,
Oh,
no,
yes.
it's a resource.
It's a resource.
You can use
Oh,
this.
okay.
This reduces the off-island cost for
Right, yes.
residue,
Oven.
and then to create a byproduct
Yes.
is the other part.
Yes.
So the byproduct,
Can be a fuel source, or it can be a soil amendment or a fuel source.
so contribute to discussion regarding uses of byproduct?
Yeah. Say that again. That was good.
Contribute to the discussion of uses of byproduct?
Yep.
Yes.
So in the objective, where you're going, I think, is reducing off-island transportation and creating a resource, a renewable
Yes.
resource.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Reducing off-island transportation and creating a renewable resource.
He's talking about the overall objective.
Oh,
No,
Oh,
I
Yeah,
think it's
this applies
this
to
one,
this solid-
because
okay,
we
sorry.
might be a bit broader for that one, I'm
Okay.
not sure yet.
But
Although it might, you're
it
right.
might-
That might-
It might be, actually, you're
I
right.
tried this.
I think you're right.
I was thinking, wow, he's right. That's the objective. Yes.
Yeah.
this is gonna be the main objective.
I think
I
that
think so.
captures everything we want
It's,
for.
it's one that's
Well,
been
covers
covered
everything.
for a long time.
Leave it there for now, and put it there as well, copy and paste, don't erase.
Okay.
We might refine that one a little bit,
Yeah.
or whatever to make, or we might refine either, who knows?
Because I've talked to a bunch of people, and like it's not waste. It's
Exactly.
a potential resource.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So.
Okay, let's talk about, okay, if we're going to use the resource for the new municipal infrastructure, do we need to have that in here, or will?
See, I was thinking about that because the oven thing
That's
is being delayed,
Yeah.
but the community center and the fire hall, and like I don't know if we would be able to.
There'll be a little while still, they gotta.
But you know what? If
I think what Steph put there contributes to the discussion regarding uses, covers it within that 1 year.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
that's right, that's good enough, yeah. Okay, let's talk about biochar. What do you want, what's the method gonna be?
So,
Oh,
method is to,
get someone to set up one of
Yes,
those
it's
stills
just-
that was on the video, like it's not that big, like if we could.
There's two thoughts come to mind. One is disseminate information about it.
Yeah, so
Get people knowing about it.
Yeah.
And then demonstrate it.
You know what? Maybe this is something that your Grafton Lake thing,
That's a really good idea.
oh,
right?
Because it is you need a demonstration.
Yeah. And I talked to John Reed about it previously.
Sounds
And
good.
the tricky part about it also, the wood has to be dried, so it can't just be a pile that's left out in the rain.
Oh,
It takes planning ahead.
Okay, right. Of course it has. to
And
be.
everybody wants to use dry wood
Yeah.
to heat their homes,
Yeah, but this is the little branches that.
or the little branches and stuff. Okay.
Or if you start out small enough, you go to the contractors. Instead of having your burn barrel,
Oh, yeah.
maybe can I just come by in my truck?
So that's how I first made it, the little tiny wood
Right.
bits and the paint came inside the wood store.
That ties us right into Bill Green.
Right? Because you see,
Separating
Right.
all waste.
Separating the waste.
yeah. But it couldn't be. You'd have to be careful to like treated stuff. And,
Yeah, but that's all part of that.
right.
So, Alan, what about
that could be
For
previously
biochar,
done.
like we're talking
Yeah.
about a one-year
You
plan,
need to cut the whole.
or create a demonstration biochar project.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh my
I
goodness.
think that's a great start.
Yeah, I think that's, because this stuff I think is right up your alley. That's what, like this, I think that would be more useful to you guys than the byproduct of the.
Really? I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
Okay, so if the objective is to create, or maybe that's the action, creating a demonstration bioproduct. Maybe that's the action, create a demonstration biochar project, is that the action? I think that's the action.
I think it is,
And
yeah.
then the objective is
So
to
this is more of
build.
an educational one.
Yeah, so, yeah, that goes there, and then the objective is to demonstrate the feasibility of, demonstrate the feasibility and potential expansion of creating biochar and Bowen. So from wood waste.
Local wood waste.
From local wood waste.
Biochar what?
And you know what, it doesn't have to be
Local
just,
wood waste.
it doesn't have to be just the wood, like from building. It can be your garden waste,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, there's a few sources there.
Yeah.
Three major sources.
I have to go, I'm sorry. I have
Yeah,
a
no.
sitter. My husband's out of town and I have a sitter.
I've got to go and make.
Who's gonna do your
13.
recycling now?
And she needs to go home.
Yeah.
She's 13,
That's
so.
fair.
It's
But,
good.
sorry.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. I won't bother you again though.
No, you don't, you can go right ahead. You can bother me anytime.
I think I think we've done pretty good work.
Yeah.
And I think we should reconvene, like, we've got some stuff that we can give to Sarah. So you can sort of have Sarah have a look at this and in terms of its feasibility and staff work. Off you go.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Laura.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
If we're done, are we gonna come back to waste? Because I do think that supporting Bird to take more stuff is a laudable thing.
Or was the thing about Bird, like what Louise McIntosh was talking about Bowen Wines and sort of their systems that they have there, like recyclable plastic being mixed in with the regular plastic and therefore not being able to reach its recyclable potential or.
Yeah,
Is there
contaminated
some- She's
streams.
looking for some kind of
This sort of-
support, but.
Yeah.
I think the objective would be to, I think, reduce contamination of the
Of the
waste
streams.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put that reduce contamination of the waste stream in the next box right down.
But yeah, the recycle stream, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, recycling stream, sorry.
Cycle stream. That's me.
And then, I guess the action will be to work with Louise, something like that, like to,
Both Louises?
um,
Louise Mac-
Well, that's right, 'cause-
Sorry, both McIntoshes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because her big thing was getting the food suppliers
If there's a Mac and there's a Mint.
to switch to their not biodegradable,
Yeah.
well, biodegradable, but
Yeah.
compostable.
So it's Bowen waste and.
Well, Ellen
Yeah,
from
the
the
Ruddy.
Ruddy, she's come to us and she
Something in
can.
food retailers or whatever you
Oh,
call it.
I see.
Right.
Okay. Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah,
Waste contractor,
Yeah, so to broaden this a little bit, you want the two systems to work together. I mean, we want to
or fees.
we want to reduce the amount of plastic waste, that's one thing.
yes,
Reduce the
yes.
amount of plastic waste and increase the recycling of alternative materials, whatever the heck they are.
Yes.
It would be nice if those could be switched to compostable or
Well,
biodegradable
that-
products only.
I think that's what we're
It's like
trying to do.
banning plastic bags, it could be
Yeah.
just,
That's
Yeah.
what we're working on.
Yeah.
yeah.
So then just after.
Because we get
materials,
almost all of that
reduce
as waste out there.
Contamination.
Yeah, then reduce contamination of the recycling.
It's such a
Okay, I
huge
think
So
work
it's
with waste
six where-
contractor and food establishments. I think you got it now.
Okay.
That's good. I'm feeling tired.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my
If
God.
David's tired, then the rest of us will
Yeah.
too.
Composting toilets is a non-starter.
I think we've done some good work.
Yeah.
Like, we're not done, but it's kind of,
Just
it's kind
leave
of
it
rough.
alone. Honestly.
This
They're in
technique,
junior home
by the
and
way,
it-
stuff is fantastic.
It is.
Thank you. for
Well,
that.
and you know what,
Yes,
I mean, that's,
thank you.
that system is just a boiler that boils water. So, I mean, well, I guess that's not, that's not a step code. So,
Hey.
Okay, so let's see.
or is it? Like if you, like this, I don't know if you know about it.
domestic hot water is
Yeah, but I mean, so taking food waste, dehydrate it, you pelletize it, you burn it, it's got a higher food than wood. I've seen the boilers work. I don't know if it's scalable, but so if you put that into your step
Okay, so
code
we're
program, does that
Okay.
count against?
That
would be fantastic.
Thank you, it was really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Right, then
Pass it
I
on to
wrap
buyers.
up, motion to adjourn and all that.
Okay.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They get points against it because
Motion to
it's
adjourn?
not-
So moved.
It's not stable.
All in favor, opposed, carried.
Renewable.
Right.
Thanks, folks, that was pretty good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta rush to Tiernan now
Okay.
to see if my wife is still there or what.
You better hope she's still
Yeah,
there.
that was probably a very good show.
Yeah, I know, I love Sherry.
What show was that?
Another Sherry's and.
Oh,
Another
the
great-
Trust Me series.
that
Yeah.
part.
Oh, and I saw that one, I wanted to go to that.
Yeah, I wanted to go and I realized, oh, crap. It's our meeting.
Yeah, she got me into Martin Joseph.